Nice to see you, sir. So different. I know. So just in case we're playing video games, is that what you're playing?
I know, and I feel so unprofessional.
Gotcha. But I'm not being paranoid.
Yes.
I cleaned up some of the signs at the gas station and then realized later that someone thinks it's the time to just keep the stakes locked out.
What made the two that are in
But none of the features work, that's why doctors,
Oh, Jeremy.
East Coast was on the list and it was onboarding and logging now.
Oh,
I was trying to find a fast one.
you remember this one, hopefully it's stuck.
Small ones.
But I think she was more focused on sciences, so then.
Is that a show?
Oh. No, last time I saw Michelle, she had like my teenager shirt. I keep trying to make a shirt with my teenager face.
I should have brought my other new one that's like that. I'll wear it to the next meeting.
I kind of,
And Christina has to come to the next one.
I feel like I kind of joke that I'll make a t-shirt with Laura's face on it or June's face on it. So I'm Laura's mom and wear it around.
You got your extra points? That doesn't provide some.
Oh, the other day, Laura was right about something. Right. She's like, I was right, I'm like, you were right. You want me to clean up here in the store? Nora is
This is a district.
Oh.
I
No, but the certificate expires, that's what. I didn't make one. Next time.
You know what? I mean, since, well, I've been in the district. Oh, for CLSU, last year? Yeah, I could. So you were saying you were going that day? I'm not that clever right now. Oh, good. Yes. You need me to do that?
Okay. Yes, that's step one. Good evening, everybody. So I see that the board is already here. Our guest is, can you please join me for the pledge of allegiance?
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I will read brief acknowledgement of land. Sunnyvale School District is located on the ancestral and unceded land of the Motiva of Lauren tribe, who have peacefully honored and cared for this land for thousands of years. We recognize that every member of the Sunnyvale community continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land. We acknowledge our responsibility to learn from the wisdom of the Ohlone people and to consider how we might work to repair injustices and move forward together in our efforts. And for that, we move to item 2, which is the approval of the agenda. May I have a motion for the agenda as it is right now?
I move that we approve today's agenda.
Okay, any
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay, so everybody who would like to vote for the agenda as it is, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have agenda.
Sorry. Do we have online translation?
We don't.
Okay. And with that, we move to item number 3, review and action. Our first item, 3A, is a public hearing and approval of the resolution R2506 in the matter of sufficiency of instructional materials. And for that, we are going to listen from Dr. Tasha D.
Good evening, board. Bringing to you a resolution. This is a part of our requirement as a part of Education Code 60119. Basically, we have to hold a public hearing with regards to our sufficiency of instructional materials. This is to take place somewhere within the 8th week of school. The district has developed instructional programs and materials and content and guidance with this particular responsibility and in alignment with our curriculum frameworks and curricular areas. It is our recommendation that the board conducts its public hearing and adopt resolution number R2506 on the sufficiency of instructional materials.
Okay, and with that, we open the public hearing is 6:03. And if there is any member of the community who wishes to speak on this particular item, which is 3A, this is the perfect time to do so. Okay, so it's 6:04, and I have a card that is on the next item, not this one. So with that, we close the public hearing on this item, which is 3A. And, we have an action, the action will be a vote to approve this. So, can I have a motion to approve the resolution for sufficiency of instructional material?
I move approval of resolution number R2506 on the sufficiency of instructional materials.
Okay, and a second?
Sure, a second.
Okay, and everybody who would like to vote for this, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we pass and we approve the resolution in the matter of sufficiency of instructional material. And now we move to item 3B, which is a public hearing and adoption of the middle school algebra curriculum. And for that, we are gonna hear from Dr. Tasha D.
Okay. This next item is with regards to our middle school algebra curriculum. You've been presented some details with regards to that adoption and process. But before we jump into a few more details, I just wanted to make a few acknowledgements. It has come to our attention as a teaching and learning team that there was maybe not as much clarity with regards to at least one teacher's differing perspective on the algebra component of that pilot process. We acknowledge that there were differing perspectives from students and from staff, and we have considered all of those different perspectives, which are valuable, and we appreciate the consideration of all voices as a part of this process. We understand that there are some concerns with regards to the feedback, and we recognize and value those perspectives in making this very important decision. We also recognize that there have been, it may not have been as clear with regards to that, and so we just wanted to be sure that there are details related to that, and those details have been considered as a part of this process. We also want to emphasize that the current curriculum has been successful for a narrow group of students excelling in algebra. But our goal to expand that success to a broader range of students, we also are committed to increasing access and success both in algebra and beyond for our students by adopting the proposed curriculum. Our rationale for this is basically our theory of action. And our theory of action is that we are looking to align our curriculum across grade levels, will open access and lead to greater success for all students. This happens through three main reasons, based upon research, based upon our expertise, and based upon the math input that we have received. That is that when students encounter consistent routines, procedures, and structures, it reduces the cognitive load, allowing them to focus more on learning and content. Consistent curriculum implemented with integrity is a driver in improving student learning outcomes. We believe that all students, regardless of their reading abilities or access to external resources, can engage in and succeed in advanced mathematics. We feel that by adopting this curriculum, we are making advanced math more accessible to diverse learners. It fosters inclusivity, ensuring that students of all backgrounds and skill levels have the opportunity to succeed in algebra and beyond. Research does show that such alignment leads to improved outcomes over time. While we acknowledge that there are concerns with the recommendation that is before you this evening, we do feel that what we've learned and the support for the curriculum and the support that we resulted in from our pilot results will align for greater alignment, hopefully a greater outcome for district goals, and ultimately expanding access to advanced mathematics to strongly support our students. And so we just wanted to offer those additional points as we proceed with our recommendation to adopt the proposed curriculum.
Okay. So I am opening the public hearing at 6:08. Yes, so we do have two cards for this item. If you have any extra card referring to 3B, please give them right now. And we are accepting all, and we have two people online. Okay. So, yeah, we gave already 1 more minute, so we're gonna start with Michelle Cole.
I'm pretty sure. Good evening, board members, Dr. Gallagher, the Sunnyvale community. Thank you for providing the time and space for public comment. My name is Michelle Koo, and since the 2021-2022 school year, I have been the only algebra teacher at Columbia Middle School. I am incredibly nervous to share my opinion, but I feel compelled to do so in order to advocate for what I believe is best for students. During the 2023-2024 school year, I was part of the Sunnyvale School District Middle School Math Pilot. I was the only algebra teacher on the committee from both CMS and SMS. And when the committee met in March of 2024, I recommended adopting College Prep Math, or CPM, for algebra based on my experiences piloting Amplified Desmos Math, College Prep Math, and Illustrative Math. I recommended adopting CPM for algebra because it is a rigorous curriculum that encourages group work, fosters rich student discourse, helps students develop conceptual understanding, and promotes critical thinking through the use of word problems. Additionally, CPM has built-in homework help that students and parents can access, a parent guide that explains how concepts are being taught, also providing sample problems and solutions. I respect the decision to adopt Amplify Desmos Math for Math 6, 7, and 8, along with courses Math 6, 7, and Math 7, 8, which was made in April of 2024. In LCAP Rule Number 2, we want to provide high-quality, equitable, and responsive instruction for all students to prepare them for college and career readiness. As such, the focus should be on using high-quality, rigorous curriculum for our different courses, rather than on alignment of curriculum across different courses in order to provide equitable instruction to all our students, including those in accelerated. At Columbia, in the 2023-24 school year, 96% of algebra students scored proficient and advanced. In 22-23, 87% of algebra students scored proficient or advanced. And in 21-22, 98% scored proficient or advanced on the Smarter Ballot State test, during which CPM was used as our curriculum. Additionally, students have made significant gains as measured by NWEA. Last year, 86% of algebra students met their growth goals, which indicates they continued to grow even if they were already scoring above grade level, and our median percentile rank was 92%. The data at CMS shows that CPM is an effective curriculum for our students. Implementing a new curriculum adoption takes a lot of time to plan, anticipate student needs, and become familiar with pacing. If we were to adopt ADM for algebra, this would mean I am taking, I'm sorry.
You can leave us the.
Can I just finish my sentence?
Yes.
Okay. Tonight, I hope you postpone making a decision. I implore you to ask more questions and gather more info. Thank you.
You can leave us also we'll be the material if you want to.
No, I started scribbling on it, so.
And then the next person will be Lisa Rademancher.
My name is Lisa Rademacher, and I'm a parent of an 8th grader in Algebra 1 at Sunnyvale Middle. I started working nightly on math with my daughter at the start of her 6th grade year, so I have over 2 years of firsthand experience working daily with Desmos, both as a supplement and now as the exclusive Algebra 1 curriculum. I have a lot of concerns about this curriculum. What I can quickly tell you is that while Desmos is good at providing interactive visuals for math concepts, it unfortunately fails to connect those visuals to the processes necessary to fully understand, execute, and have confidence in math. The way Desmos works is that each lesson begins with an online activity section that includes some interactive visual representation of whatever math concept is being taught. And it's usually pretty clear and easy enough to follow. And then suddenly it's asking the student, select the expression that represents this, or write an equation to represent this. And it's like, okay, when did they explain to us how to do that? And you start looking back through online in the workbook, and it's not there. And if you're thinking, well, that's what our teachers are for, to bridge the gap between concept and process. Okay, but why would you provide materials to students that leave out such a significant part of the learning, the how? Why would you have students step away from the materials you've given to listen to a lesson with no materials, so that ultimately if they had trouble following or understood and forgot by evening homework, there is nothing for them to reference? My conclusion is that the creators of Desmos don't believe in explaining the process. If a child doesn't intuitively understand, for example, how to write an explicit definition for a geometric sequence, they want the child to figure it out. Setting aside my issues with that philosophy, if the child does figure it out, rather than reinforcing that, the next homework problem is almost always either a version of the previous problem, but with messy numbers, fractions, decimals, exponents, or a significantly harder version of the problem with no explanation, or a solution that is purposely written incorrectly and the student is tasked with determining why. While these are great ways to test a child's mastery of a skill or to challenge once a skill has been mastered, they are extremely unhelpful when you are still in the learning stage, particularly when Desmos homework only offers 10 to 12 questions a night, 3 of which are reviewed from other units, 1 is usually a brain teaser. So you're really looking at about 6 to 8 problems a night that even pertain to the concept being taught. I don't think this is optimal for learning. I don't believe you can just show students a visual representation of 2 variable linear equations and assume they'll naturally understand how to write it and solve it, and they'll be successful at it with minimal practice and review. Some kids, yes, and obviously we also have a percentage of kids in our classes who do math outside of school, and Algebra 1 is just review. But for most kids, a solid foundation in math requires a curriculum that connects concept to process and provides progressively challenging homework so that they can wholly understand, retain, and have proficiency and confidence in math.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And with that, we go to the people online.
We have Helen Fong, followed by Courtney Jansen.
Okay, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Helen. I am a parent of a in the community, and I would first of all want to thank everybody for you guys looking into the middle school curriculum, because I think middle school is very important to not just bridge the gap and get the student ready for high school, as well as kind of, as others have mentioned, into the real world. I think I just want to reiterate, it's very important that we have advanced math track like algebra and geometry in middle school. So I do want to thank the board and all the people who are involved in holding this public comment so we could comment on it. But I actually didn't have a lot of experience with the proposed method. So not necessarily commenting on that, but I want to comment on is whatever method that the board and the district choose to use, we would like to understand some data on how the middle school are performing in high school, right? From a 2020 board member meeting, the Sunnyvale Middle School, the president back then, has shared that the advanced math track students were lagging behind or comparing to other middle school outside of from Cupertino Middle and etc. So I want to see how this curriculum, new proposed curriculum, are bridging that gap to ensure our advanced students are not falling behind, are improving or learning all the material they need. I also would like to see data from previous few years. How many of our middle students had to downlink in high school? That means like the students from middle school who were recommended to go into the advanced math track in high school, and they had to downlink in high school because somehow they are not able to catch up. I understand some of this data might not necessarily needed to decide which curriculum Algebra 1 is in, but I think those are solid data to see how we can improve to support our students and support our teachers so they could teach our students effectively. And lastly, I would just want to say is we need to do everything we can to preserve the public school experience and offer an advanced math track so that everybody has opportunity to get the advanced math that they need, because otherwise, parents is gonna like go to other alternative like private school and etc. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to learn more about the middle school curriculum in future board meetings. Thanks.
Lisa, can I ask the third question, please? Sure. Ms. Fong, could you?
Usually do that.
Oh, okay, we do that soon.
Okay, the next person?
Next is Courtney Jansen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. My name is Courtney Jansen. I am a parent with San Miguel kids, and sorry I couldn't make it in person tonight, but it just didn't work. So I want to thank the district for having the curriculum out for review. I am going to admit that I did not have time to go to the district office to look at the curriculum. I have just been swamped with things, and so I'm not going to make a recommendation tonight, but I did want to raise a couple of things that as a parent with kids who will be using this curriculum in a few years are important. The first thing to me that is important is whatever curriculum is used, students need to have the basics of Algebra 1 memorized. And it's been a long time since I took Algebra 1. I don't have an example for that, but as an example, kids have to learn their multiplication tables. If kids don't know that 6 times 6 is 36, 5 times 5 is 25, they can't do more complicated math. And so whatever that equivalent is for Algebra 1, I want to make sure that the curriculum does those basics of Algebra 1 very well, and so kids know it without having to think about it. Second point that would be important to me would be the amount of time that is spent on technology, iPads, Chromebooks, or whatever. It is important to me that whatever curriculum is chosen has minimal time and technology and relies more on teacher-student instruction, student-to-student collaboration, etc. The third point that is important to me is how does this curriculum prepare our kids for going into the high school? So I have heard that Cupertino Union uses the CPM curriculum. I've also heard that Sunnyvale School District students are not always at the same level of Cupertino, but if we are able to match curriculums and if our students are able to be successful so that when they join the high school, they're on par with Cupertino Union students, to me, that would be amazing. I heard someone mention, I think it was Dr. Dean, about the importance of curriculum consistency. I completely agree. I think I heard that comment more in the context of grades 6 to 8, which is important, but I also wonder about curriculum consistency from grades 8 through 9, 10, 11, and 12. And the last point that as a parent I would like to make is, as I was reading through this stuff online, I would really like to see a little bit more quantitative information about the pilot. And this may have come up in another board meeting that I missed. If so, I apologize, but I read this and I was wondering how many teachers were involved, how many students, how long did the pilot last? How many classes were in the pilot? I read somewhere it said that students were intimidated by the amount of text on a page. What percentage of students were intimidated? Was it 10%? Was it 100%? And it was really hard for me to read through this and get a strong judgment one way or the other. So thank you for your consideration for this. My last comment I will pull out. I really appreciate the teacher who spoke. I think it's super important for parents like myself to be able to talk to teachers. To be fair, I haven't talked to any about curriculum and what our students are learning in the classroom. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. With that, that's the last few comments, then we can open comments from the board.
You gotta close the public hearing.
Yeah, it's 6:23, and with that, we close, if there's more comments, we close the public comments, 6:24. Comments from the board, we can start down the vote.
So we usually make a motion before we do comments to change them out.
I think that would be appropriate to have a motion.
A motion to, okay, approve.
That way you can discuss it.
Do we have a motion to approve before we discuss it?
Well, you need to have a motion, whatever the content,
Do you want to make a motion, Nancy?
for the recommendation. So for purposes of having a discussion.
Any second?
Talk
Yeah.
a little louder so we
Okay.
can hear you.
So I move that we accept the recommendation of the committee for the adoption of math materials as listed.
Any second? Okay. Who wants to start? Do we go down the road first, in order? Nancy, you wanted to make a comment?
I appreciate the points that were brought up. I'm sorry, I'm used to having the mic on.
Yeah.
So forgive me for a moment. I appreciate the big picture look over the curriculum. Unlike the other curricular areas that we have, math is a little bit different in the fact that we do have some acceleration. And I want to make sure that we look at that in that particular context. And, I had asked, and I'm not sure if there's time for more information about the high school experience, because I want kids to be successful in the environment in which they're going to continue their math progress. So for me, that is a distinction, and that's something that I would like to have some more information about tonight.
Michelle? So are we, like I have a few questions, am I going through all of those right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So a few comments and then also some questions for staff. So one, I just appreciate everyone's comments through here and online, and I have some people emailed us ahead of time. And I just really value, regardless of whatever decision that we make tonight, I definitely feel like because people have shared concerns, it has caused, I think, everyone, board and staff, to pause and think through questions, right? And so I think regardless of what is decided tonight, that we're all thinking deeper. So I'm just grateful, right? I'm grateful for people's questions, and let's take the time to think through this more. So really grateful for all that. So a few kind of thoughts and then also comments from some of the comments that were made by the public tonight. One I really loved, which I think is just, I almost want to write this down to think about this every time we do curriculum. I loved Courtney's, her third one is, how does this curriculum prepare our students for success in high school? She might have worded it a little differently, but I think that's a great question. And I just, let's just, every time we're doing curriculum, especially kind of that's one of our goals, right, is helping our kids to succeed in high school and beyond. So I just think that's a great question for us. I think we talk about it a lot, but just actually intentionally incorporating that for all of our curriculum stuff. And then just wanted to share for everyone, but Courtney, when you asked about consistency in curriculum, I actually did reach out to my kids. There are two kids at Fremont High School. There's a teacher that I thought he was a department lead. He's not a department lead anymore, but we had a little bit of a back and forth. And that's what I was wondering too, is what, depending on what they're doing, if they're doing one of these ones that we're considering, that might be a reason to go with one of those. And they kind of do a conglomerate of their own mix and match Mod Podge using all those different pieces. So I was like, okay, well that's not helpful in helping us make our decision, right? And then so I think one of the things I really from one of the comments was the concern about I don't know if it's to Tasha or to you guys.
Yes, all of them.
Yeah, that's why I'm I don't know if who's gonna answer this, but here we go both ways. The concern about it's missing the how, right? That online stuff, if she was helping her kid and it's just there and then you work on it, but the how component is missing. So I'm curious about, do you guys agree that is a piece that is not good with Desmos? Do you look at it differently? Because that is still concerning if there's not good explanation for the kids, right, when they're at home.
So the how question, is that what I'm answering, or am I answering?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the that it's not explaining the how for kids.
Yeah.
To get to the answers and the solution.
When they're doing individual practice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for that piece, so Amplified Desmos is a new curriculum in the sense of the Desmos curriculum. It was created back a few years ago, and then the Amplified company purchased the Desmos curriculum. So they have revamped it a lot more than what Desmos originally had. So Desmos in the past didn't necessarily have workbooks, student workbooks, and parent guides to be able to go home. So Amplified Desmos has been developing that, and this is something new. They've just been slowly rolling that out, so we haven't had a chance to share that with families yet. So one of the new things is a parent, for each unit, a parent guide that gives a summary of what is taught in each of the lessons. And then they have some practice problems, and then with the practice problems, they also have sets of the answer with step-by-step of how they solve the problem. So that is one of the ways that Amplified Desmos has been beefing up their support for homework.
Okay, so it doesn't there's the old Desmos.
Yes,
That did maybe have, I mean, no curriculum's perfect, there's always
Exactly.
concerns, right? But had maybe more significant concerns that have, some of those have been addressed.
yes.
And I think,
If I could just add one other piece.
Yeah.
With like middle school math in particular, it's a little bit like the Common Core shift from a while ago, which is, it's a very different way of understanding math. And I will say, like, as a parent and as an educator, it's a shift away from like learning the straight algorithm and like multitudes of practice as a way to understand. It's we want to be able to affirm students' mathematical thinking, even if they don't have the vocabulary or the algorithm. So as opposed to like a top-down, learn the algorithm and do problems, it feels a little bit like, as somebody who's not as much of a math expert as like Jane or Dr. Schuler, it feels a little more bottom-up. So I just wanted to bring that comparison to the table.
yeah. And then my last question, which is a small one, I mean, my daughter's only one person, but what was the curriculum that SMS algebra used last year?
Last year they used CPM.
Last year they used CPM, okay. Okay, that was all my question.
I have some questions about the pilot. So if Michelle is the only algebra teacher who participated in the pilot, were all the other teachers who were judging what algebra curriculum we should use, were those 6 to 8 teachers?
So we actually had a team of 9 teachers that were on the pilot team. We originally opened it up to all teachers, math teachers at both middle schools, but only these 9 teachers are the ones who stepped up and volunteered to be on the pilot team. We only had 1 teacher who taught algebra who volunteered to be on the pilot team. And so the way that the pilot process works is we actually we piloted for Math 6, Math 6-7, Math 7, Math 7-8, Math 8, Algebra 1, and Geometry, so for all of our courses. And when we come together, we actually make a recommendation as a group for what do we want the curriculum to be for all of these courses. And it's not a individual recommendation for each course.
I guess my question is, if only one teacher teaches geometry, how are the other teachers algebra? How are the other teachers piloting this process? Were they teaching students the Desmos curriculum, but
Their grade level version.
their grade levels version of it? And so I guess to me, it's not a straight apples to apples, so I would have appreciated more data and I understand that you're limited by your volunteer pool, more data from other algebra teachers. The other thing that I would really like more data on, and I am currently leaning towards waiting and asking for, before deciding on this curriculum, is more data from the high school district about how our students are performing. When I looked at our board calendar, I think we had next month, we're gonna be talking to the high school board, is that correct? So is this something that could theoretically be revisited after that conversation?
We're not meeting with high school board.
I'm sorry, but there's a discussion about our articulation.
I don't know that that's, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it's.
I guess I would appreciate that this being part of that discussion, of that articulation discussion. I wanna know how our kids are doing. And I also struggle a little to understand why we're changing a curriculum that seems to be working. Is the hope that by how do kids qualify for Algebra 1? And is the hope that if we have the same curriculum, more kids will take Algebra 1? Or I don't understand that piece. You brought up equity and making it more accessible, but I don't quite have the connection there. I guess this is a question, I don't know.
So is your question like, why
Yeah.
new curriculum, is it more accessible for more students?
Yes, like what is it in addition to this new curriculum that would be making algebra more accessible to students? Are we hoping that they'll want to take it if the curriculum is the same? Because I don't think kids know that.
Yeah. So I heard a number of questions and I'm just gonna try and answer them.
Yeah.
To the best of my ability, and Dr. Dean and James has added. I think the question around like changing curriculum in terms of opening access, Dr. Dean said it well at the beginning. When we know that when students have some alignment in curriculum in terms of routines and procedures, process, it lowers their ability, their need to spend cognitive load on learning the process. It increases their ability to access content. So the theory of action is that if students are in like learning the same process in their accelerated math courses, that will lower their effective filter when they go into algebra, increasing their success. So it's not so much that they would like choose to go into algebra differently because of the curriculum as much as it is we would experience higher levels of success by all students, which I know is a goal for us as a district. And I can elaborate on that further.
Do you have data on who isn't succeeding in algebra now?
So we have, we can pull more data to look at that later. Right now, we know that we have more students opt into the advanced math courses at Sunnyvale Middle than we do at Columbia Middle. And also success rates vary based on where students start. So we want to make sure that all students are successful. That would be a data piece we can follow. I think there was a question about high school district data to see how students are doing. I think what we would expect is, and we can look more into this, is that our students in the advanced math pathway would be successful at high school level. So we can get more of that data. Part of it is these students are already in the advanced math pathway and successful, and so we would anticipate that they were able to continue that level of success. Our goal in switching curriculum is to open that up so that we have more students experiencing levels of success to go into high school. Right now, either families or students opt into the program for a variety of reasons, or we make a recommendation based on how they perform at elementary school in mathematics. So we're just working to continue to expand access and success for all our students.
I feel like I'm still not getting how this expands access. I mean, you talked about the cognitive load, but I don't really see how this will open the door wider for more students being able to succeed in algebra or going into algebra in the first place.
Let me try one more time, and then I think Dr. Dean and Jane, because I'm not a night person. Definitely a morning person. I think another way to look at it is if students come into the advanced math pathway, we also have students that exit out of the advanced math pathway. I'm not saying that exists. We'd have to pull more data, but we also know that students do come out of the advanced math pathway because they're not experiencing success. And so we want to limit that. We want to keep students in that pathway, want to increase their success and not have them exit out. So then if they have alignment in terms of instructional practice from elementary school, illustrative math is a similar design to Amplify Desmos. It would allow them to build their skills longitudinally over years and hopefully decrease the number of students that feel successful or weren't successful.
Quick question, are you saying that hypothetically students could be exiting out or that students are exiting out?
Students are exiting out.
They are exiting out. Like a lot of students or?
We'd have to pull more data, but we know that there are students that do exit out. And I know there might be more to that. Dr. Dean or James, you want to add on?
And there's some logistical components that also go to CPM that we also would consider, like training and support in that program. The program also hasn't been updated over several years, and so there's some operational logistic pieces in addition to the content and the alignment we're trying to seek throughout the district. So there's those elements as well. Some other factors is students also weighed in on our decision as well and voiced their opinion. And these are students who actually were in the algebra class and were a part of the students who had access to both curriculums and was pilot. So there's those variables as well.
The other item that I would mention and maybe the team can comment on. When I looked at the data, the demographic data of the students enrolled in algebra, it does not look like the demographic data of our district. And that is absolutely one of our goals, is to broaden access to the full spectrum of students that we have in our district.
Well, I think during the strategic plan, we talked about the algebra class and called it out.
Yeah, that's really important.
Can you remind me when the rest of when the rest of the schools will switch to Desmos? What was that
They're
last year?
We're using it, well, we use it as a pilot, and we're using it this year at SMS, and CPM is at CMS currently.
For 6 to 8. Or what are we using that?
She's asking about 6 through 8, not algebra. She's
Yes.
asking about
What's
6
the
through 8.
year
So
on
6
that?
through 8, this year is our first year of implementing
Oh, it is.
Amplified Desmos Math
Okay.
with full training and
But it
full
sounds
support.
like there was an old just Desmos version that had been used.
Yes,
Correct.
correct.
And how long have you been using that?
The old
Desmos?
Desmos,
Yeah.
the old Desmos was originally, I think, during the pandemic,
Okay.
because it was something that teachers could use.
So before they been using the CPM in all the other classes that are not.
No,
No, but, go ahead, James. Go
sorry,
ahead.
no, CPM was just in the algebra course was being used. And then the other courses was the old Desmos curriculum or our old curriculum, Carnegie Learning.
So just to clarify, the students who were piloting the algebra curriculum were students who have already switched over to Desmos and have been using it basically their entire middle school career. So
Not their entire, but it's a part of the pilot time period.
Okay, but they were using the old, not Amplified Desmos, but Desmos in 6 and 7 and 8.
Yes.
Well, they wouldn't have used it in 8.
Oh, 6 and 7.
Seven.
8 was algebra, for 6 and 7 would have had the old Desmos
Right.
Okay,
for the accelerated math.
okay, so that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, so a couple of comments about like the process in general, like, first of all, I was pretty shocked that this was like gonna be a public hearing, but with no access for the internet initially, like that this was a governance meeting, like I really feel like, you know, this is a lot of parents I talk to are really interested in math, you know, they're interested in our curriculum, and especially middle school math. I've heard a lot about middle school curriculum, and so I really am grateful that there's a call and opportunity for comment, and I would say like for the future when we're doing these, I really think we should have translation and have a regular meeting for full transparency. Or even just perception of transparency. I mean, we're here a lot of times, nobody comes, but you know, there are people in the room now and there's people who call in. The second thing is about the process. You know, I feel like it is a high stakes thing for us because the students who are taking Algebra 1 are not taking other electives at the middle school that they might be really interested in because they're trying to get on that advanced math pathway. And it's almost like they're trying to be on level with their peers at the high school district. So if what we're giving them is not as rigorous as like a high school level math course, they're not gonna be on level with their peers when they get there. I personally don't think. And I feel like if we only had, process-wise, if we only had one teacher pilot it, and that teacher didn't recommend it, I don't really care what the rest of the committee thinks, honestly. Like, for me, like, I mean, I care what teachers think in general, but if there's only one teacher testing and that teacher says, this isn't gonna meet the needs of the standards they're supposed to cover, which is like, for me, the biggest deal, that makes me very uncomfortable about the process, and I don't know if we need to, I don't know if we offer stipends for teachers who are giving the, you know, we used to do curriculum testing for the whole year, and we used to offer a stipend. Do we still offer a stipend for teachers? Do we?
I think it's some support. I think the point of clarification that's important though is we're talking about through teachers.
Yeah, so.
And so it's a little bit different than our typical, so it's almost like we're comparing apples and oranges, so I just do want to clarify that.
But if I'm buying a car, if I'm gonna go buy a car and like, I'm like gonna test drive that car and like I'm gonna be the driver of the car, I wanna know that the car is gonna work for me. And if I say, no, I don't want that car, and someone goes, you're gonna get this other car, it doesn't make sense to, or like, no, you have to drive that car. Why would we buy a car that is not gonna work for
from the perspective of the teacher who's going to be teaching it. The other thing is the CPM math thing. I mean, I have heard anecdotally, and I would love for our district to follow up, that pre-pandemic, our kids, the feedback from the high school teachers was that our kids were not prepared as the Cupertino Union, which is the only other district that feeds in there. No beef with Cupertino, no personality issues with Cupertino there. But the idea was that there's only 2 districts that feed in, and our kids coming out of Algebra 1 pre-pandemic were not as prepared. And I've heard that since we switched to, the teachers on their own started using CPM, or the teams on their own started using CPM, which is comparable to what the Cupertino kids are using, they call it something else, that the results, they're seeing the kids being equally supported, that that's the result for them at the high school level. So I just don't feel comfortable, like the backup data we got for this sheet here was exactly the same as what we looked at in April. There was nothing different about the data sheet. And in April 25th, whenever that board meeting was, we said there was more evaluation happening. But it seems like there wasn't more evaluation happening from the team. You know, like the other teachers were not trying out Desmos, you know. So I'm uncomfortable at the process level with the one teacher who tried it, made a recommendation against it. And there's really no other data. And also we were talking about, we asked questions in packet review, at least I asked questions in packet review about math pathways. Eileen had a question here about math pathways. And no one wants to talk about like our math pathways. It's really hard for us to make a decision without understanding.
That is not a true statement.
What?
That no one wants to talk about math pathways. That's not.
No,
on the
I'm saying
agenda.
they're saying we're gonna talk about it later at a different meeting, right?
But
we're not talking about it here because we're only looking at Algebra 1, but we're talking about it without that context. It's really a problem for me.
I think what you were saying was not that no one wants to talk about it, but that it's really difficult to understand. My kid's in 4th grade. I'm not thinking about algebra yet. I don't understand this. I don't understand middle school math very much. But without that context, it's just really hard to understand this decision.
Oh, and last thing, so when Ethan, who's now in college, was playing volleyball and like club sport, right? He went to high school with other kids who went to all different high schools all over the South Bay and, you know, San Francisco and down on the peninsula. All these kids got together. And he found out, he thought he was in advanced math, so he was bragging away about being in advanced math in middle school. And they're like, you know what? In our school, the district, we just call that math. Like, that's just math. So, like, for me, I'm not opposed to having 6 through 8 be more rigorous. I'm not opposed to covering algebra in middle school, like, for everyone. Like, let's do it. But if we're gonna say this is a high school level class that's gonna meet the demands, that's equivalent to a high school, those kids might wanna feel a little different when they go in there. Like, feel like, yeah, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna learn that algorithm and I'm gonna be like a high school student and I'm in 7th grade and I'm gonna go in there and crush it. And, you know, I just don't feel like, I don't feel like having a high school level class that's like standing out because it's supposed to be that advanced has to be exactly like all of our other math classes. And I'm not opposed to increasing the rigor for middle school math in general.
One of the things is that as we're trying to look at this only with algebra and not in the context of all the maths and the possibilities of geometry as an extra class, if we want more kids in what we call advanced math, we need to improve all the maths for the kids to be there and be successful and make it rigorous enough so they can be successful in high school. Making it easier for more kids to get in is not fair to the kids. It's just to make it better before they get there, so it's easier once they're there. But it needs to be a rigorous material, and if it's not 100% recommended. I don't know how much are we actually putting into actually proving and make it good for the kids. The thing is that what will be fair for every child will make it rigorous and easier to get in a way that it's not easy because it's easy because we taught them so much before and we're making it understandable for them, not because we're making it easier so they won't pass in high school. So, and I understand that one of the issues is that we want to put all of them in the same environment. Some of them are using Desmos, so we're gonna make them work with the same kind of tools, or?
No, so it's just alignment in instructional methodology and approach to mathematics. So it's not so much about they're all in the bucket together and we want them all to be together, but it's about the concepts and the higher order of mathematics we're trying to teach students. And there's a distinction between, can I solve the problem and do it? If I do, practice and kill, like what I went through school, that's one approach. But do you understand the foundationals of math concepts? Can you apply it to life examples? Can you apply it to a different math situation? And that's what we're trying to teach and provide for students. So that's about the shift. So when we keep asking, why are we shifting? Yes, we're not saying that the current math program necessarily was horrible or bad, because if so, we would have pulled it before now. But this is about trying to make a decision that will allow the students who are in the program and want rigorous and high standards, but also students who may want that, but fear that they can't, giving them the tools so that they feel like they can also compete at a higher level. So it's not about lowering our standards, it's actually about raising them. So I just want to make that distinction.
That doesn't make sense.
It does make sense, because you talk about you just want one thing for algebra and it doesn't need to be like the other. But we are making decisions for a school district for a multitude of students.
Right.
And if we look at, and we will bring the data back about who's in mathematics and all of that, but to say it's watering it down or diluting it, that is not the purpose of the recommendation. That is not why the data, that is not the data we have received. That is not what is demonstrated in the program, and so that is not what's on the table. So I just want to make that distinction.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
So right now, the official curriculum is Carnegie Mellon. Is that like the official one that we adopted a while ago? Like, do we
yes.
And they haven't been using it. They've been using Desmos during the pandemic, and they've been using CP.
That is correct.
Okay, and so that's why there's an incentive to like look at the curriculum and adopt the curriculum, so we're all on the same page.
And we also have a curriculum that we feel is meeting the needs that we have.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have one thought. I have one more thought. Like, I wanted to say that when I went to, we do all these site visits, we go walk around, we talk to the principals, we go on site walkthroughs, and I do remember walking through Ms. Poo's classroom, and the principal was saying like, oh, we're getting so much, this teacher is doing so much support so that students are in the classroom who were like right on the edge to qualify are being supported in the classroom and the rigor and like going through. So regardless of the decision tonight, I just really think that there has been that intention and work going on to move more kids in there. And I've always sort of been hopeful that we would need more classrooms, more algebra teachers,
And
Yeah, I have a process comment. This is, so question, all of the teachers who are in the pilot group are single subject credentials in math, correct? So they would have that exposure, but it feels uncomfortable to me to have teachers who've been teaching a different course make a recommendation about a different course. So, and that's kind of unlike the experiences that I've had when other curriculums were brought up. So that's a discomfort for me as it was processed. And I don't know how we can make it more equitable or make sure that the teachers who didn't pilot something can, have a depth of understanding of what it's like to teach something that they haven't experienced that.
Well, they're teaching it now, they're using it now.
Okay, they are using it.
Yes.
But that's the,
Is the pilot were math teachers? Oh, okay, so yeah, they were math teachers.
But speaking of algebra specifically.
So the SMS algebra teachers are teaching Desmos Amplified this school year.
But they're supplementing it, with other stuff.
No.
Cause I think at back to school night, someone told me that like at back to school night, that they were told that the curriculum is still being created or like still underway. So like that it was very, like, I don't know, is it still in development or?
Well, they're continuing to perfect it with additional components, some of which, yes.
Because it's all new. And then the last thing is, once again, process. In the past, we've had intentional articulation for the high school to understand where the kids are going. That there would have been a high school teacher giving input into the process in a more intentional way, just so that there's more overall awareness.
You're saying in the past,
In the past,
they've done that.
in the past, they have done that. So that, this process.
I have a question about the motion. I guess not about the motion. The motion was to approve the recommendation. If we do not, what happens then? I guess it depends what the motion is, right?
Yeah, the motion was to approve or not.
What's that?
The motion was to approve.
So if most of the board does not feel comfortable moving forward right now, what is the information you want to make a decision later?
What I want, or what the board
Well,
wants?
just, I mean, yeah, I mean, but like what is?
So the other question I would want to ask, is it the curriculum overall, or is it just about the algebra? Because when I made the motion.
Just got that.
Algebra, oh, right.
Right, because the motion that I made was encompassing the entire curriculum.
No, the other curriculum was already proven, so we were, this is just algebra.
For 3E only.
Yeah, this is just algebra. Okay, well,
Yeah, I would like to know how our students who come from, so to clarify, SMS students right now, their teachers have been using Desmos
this school year.
Oh, this school year. Okay, and what were they using the previous school year? Like this work group, were they also using Desmos?
And the CPM.
Okay, I would like to know how last year's Proctor students is doing in high school at the Homestead. We got that email from a high school teacher at Fremont, I think, but I'd like to see from Homestead as well. I'd like to know who the demographics of who is succeeding in algebra, and if there are people leaving algebra, I would like to know how many and who they are. At both middle school. And I'm sure I have more of it. Do you have any?
Well, I was gonna say, if we delay, what is the downside? What is the cost of delay? Is there a financial cost to it? Will it make it difficult for professional development to continue in the cycle for this year? What would the implications of that, of a delay?
I think it depends on what the outcomes we're seeking and what we want. There is some level of investment that we've already put into starting this year with some of the curriculum, but I mean, there's more important things than just the fiscal implications. So there's that. Just also to be sure everyone knows, if they don't, we had already made a decision starting this year that SMS teachers would be using the Desmos, and we have the one teacher at CMS that was continuing this year with CPM, so it could be, we use this as a data year, but all of that is still the bottom line. What data are we seeking and what will help the board in making a recommendation that they feel serves the Sunnyvale community the best.
And for this school year, regardless of whether we decide now or later, the teachers are gonna stay with their current curriculums, finishing out this school year.
That is correct.
I think there's another thing I would like to know. So I would like to know how the algebra teachers at SMS like the curriculum.
Yeah, so it will be like a long year of piloting in a way to see how it works.
A long pilot.
A long pilot.
So with the downside, we have all the materials that we need, if
we make no decisions tonight, that
if we make no decision tonight. So we're not delaying purchasing of any new materials or anything along those lines, is that what my understanding?
We wouldn't be delaying purchasing of anything, but it probably, if there's any new additions or things like that, we would probably pause to do that, because we wouldn't want to make an investment in something that we don't know we're gonna continue using.
And also, like, if there's an issue with the training, I can read that in the write-up, that there's an issue with your training policies and availability. You know,
That's for CPM.
for CPM, right? If CPM has that issue, and if that is the deal breaker for us, then, but if Desmos still isn't the right, if the algebra teachers still can't get behind the Desmos thing, or the data is not good or the data is really good for the other one, I really feel like maybe there's a different option that we need to go for. You know what I mean?
I don't want to misspeak, because I don't have it in front of me right now, but it wasn't, the teachers did, I think two did agree as a secondary, not the first choice. So the other choices that were options were eliminated. So these were the two choices, CPM and Desmos. So we have the choices that were from the teachers.
Like the top two.
Yeah, so these are the ones we're speaking of today are the options at this time that are on the table.
I'm just saying that there was only, again, like, because there was only one algebra teacher involved, it makes it very challenging to like.
Also,
for process.
in the questions you say that what we know that is using Desmos, you mentioned San Diego, that uses San Diego, and you guys were gonna ask about their experiences. What are you seeing the neighbors that are also going to high school, and what is high school using?
Our current high school, what they're using, they're using a variety of programs.
Just to confirm what Michelle said, like the two high schools both use a hodgepodge of materials. So although, like it might say we're using like CPM, they're also supplementing with Desmos and other materials that they're making on their own internally. They also have wider departments, so like they have multiple teachers who teach multiple courses. So their level of collaboration and number of teachers is also increased at both of our high schools as well.
But Fremont especially, I think, does the like, literally kind of like a make your own curriculum. Yeah.
We do, but I mean, like, we're really looking at not like what they do for Algebra 1 and not what they do for geometry, but like how our kids who take in Algebra 1 are doing once they get there.
Yeah.
Like, are they prepared for Algebra 2 or Algebra 2 or whatever?
Right.
And it's not super helpful that they don't always track our kids, like they're like, your students do this, and then they're like, really, tell us which students, what schools are they feeding from? Well, we don't know, but we think they're Sunnyvale, so they're just, like, we're gonna need their help.
And what about other like Santa Clara, Cupertino, Palo Alto, what are they using?
I do not know. Dr. Valentine, do you know what Palo Alto?
I don't know about Palo Alto. We did talk to Cupertino and Santa Clara, Mountain View, Listman. And there's a range of materials. They're also in the same boat in terms of the student demographics in the advanced math courses don't represent their student population. So there's a piece here where even though all districts are trying to solve the how do we increase algebra access for all, nobody's yet cracked the code. Like they are currently using like a range of different materials. We're gonna talk about this later, but I do think that what we've seen in terms of alignment at elementary school with math curriculum has led to increased gains for us. So we really wanna, part of the reason why we went into middle school math adoption curriculum is because we wanna leverage that alignment across grade levels, not to discount what everybody's doing currently. But alignment helps our students increase success. And additionally, there's a piece of getting ahead of the new math framework. I mean, at the time, it's adopted now, but knowing where the math framework is going and making sure that we give our students the absolute highest amount of success odds. That was a full sentence, but I think you kind of get the gist of what I was going for. I do want to add one thing. The two teachers that are teaching algebra at SMS have given some feedback into how Amplify Desmos is going. And like Dr. Dean said earlier, we did something that Jane and Dr. Schuler, the team did, was survey students. That's something that we've been working on doing with the curriculum adoptions, to also see like what's their impact. What are they seeing in terms of help for them? So we did get, we did include that as part of the decision-making process, that it is like also students' feedback as well as like looking at achievement data across the board. Elaborate on
So one kind of thought, and then I just want to share a thought from before. It seems like majority board wants to like circle back on this a later time. So it seems like I have another thought, maybe everyone says, but then we can hopefully circle back to making a motion and then figuring out how that looks. But I think the one thing I just want, and this is just more just like keeping in mind, we don't need to have one discussion about it. But I think one of the things that I would say is one of my focuses, like when we do come back and talk about it, is like, to be really blunt, right? Our algebra classes are basically white and Asian kids, right? And so
That's not
while
true at
we-
CMS though. That's not true at CMS.
But still is the majority of them. They're improving there, but it's still the majority. So anyway, like, I think that's the tricky space for me is, right, like, it's like, right, so like people adapt, people want to know, like, if CPM is working just for our white and Asian kids, right, like, one of our priorities is, right, having more Hispanic students in our more advanced math classes and being successful in them. So I think that's a space that is like probably when we come back and make the decision, like that's an important factor to me is, right, how are we, and it seems like right as we're talking about like, right, we need to find a space. Like anyways, that's just as we're deciding later on, that's the piece that I think is really important.
I completely agree with you, and the backup information that we got on the NWEA math 1 through 8, where they're showing us the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Hispanic numbers, there's 4 kids who were proficient in 6th grade in math, 4, and who were Hispanic. Like out of 110 Hispanic kids across both schools, there's 16 kids in 7th grade who are Hispanic who are proficient in math, 13% overall. There's 23 kids who are Hispanic who are proficient in math in 8th grade. So it's increasing, but all that foundational work, like we can make it more rigorous, but we have a big lift overall, for everything. And I feel like if we're really saying all means all, that means we have to challenge all kids where they are. So we have a group of kids that's scoring high in math right now. We have to keep them challenged, and we have to bring everybody up. And so I don't think it's an either or. I don't think like
I wasn't saying either or. I was just saying
lowering.
right,
I think it's completely accurate because that's our next topic. So anyone who wants to stick around for our next conversation, like we're going to go into those numbers. And
so what's the direction from the board?
So we have to say that.
So what do? We vote on this motion.
Well, no, we don't want.
You don't.
we can.
Like she can just change.
Oh, you can change
her
her
motion.
motion.
I can change the motion, I can
we
change
just
the
wait.
motion.
Okay, she's gonna change the motion. And then someone's.
So I want to have a conversation. So what I heard that the high school district is doing is differentiating within their, because,
I don't know if that's really,
well,
that might be a little bit nice.
well, differentiating in that they're choosing things that have different strategies that they feel might be meeting the needs. And that's what I want, whatever curriculum we choose is going to need to meet the individual needs. What I heard and what I'm grappling with is trying to make the leap to the next level comfortable for all students, and that the platform that they're choosing is a comfortable platform because they've been introduced to that process. And that's the point of the exercise, is to increase capacity for more students to be able to access. As a challenged math learner, going from, I switched mid-year because of teaching styles. And it was very challenging for me to succeed in math because the teachers that I originally had taught in a very high academically rigorous method, and that was not meeting my needs of being able to explain, understand, and those kinds of subsets that I see that the Desmos Math offers, because I was used to a certain way of teaching, because I had practiced that type of teaching and learning experiences, and then to go to something that was very rigorous without a whole lot of explanation made it very difficult for me to feel successful. I was succeeding, but I didn't feel successful until it's hard. So now for your direction.
Yeah, so I'm being mindful of time, and I want to make sure we have enough time for the next, and I'm only saying that because I think there's a consensus over there. So is there a new
Well,
motion?
I don't think the motion, I think it's the tabling, right?
Yeah.
You have to make a motion.
You can withdraw your motion.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion
We
and
have to make a motion.
So if you table it, it comes back exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's a difference of withdrawing.
So we
and
do
not
probably want to make a motion.
Well, you do two things, you do no motion at all,
Yeah.
and direct the staff to do something.
Okay.
If you table it, it comes back exactly
We
the
don't
same.
want to make a
No.
motion.
Yeah.
I would withdraw.
So I think that what we want to do is get more information and.
You wrote down.
Yeah.
and the question is, when will that come back?
We'll just have to look at the board calendar.
Do you need her to officially say she's withdrawn her motion or?
Yes. So I will withdraw my motion, seeing that there's
Okay.
consensus.
And you can withdraw your second.
Do I have to do that? She's drawing her motion. Not, right? I can
Well, you're the first
I
then.
can make a new motion, but I think I'm ready to jump in first.
We have one more, so thank you for that. And with that, we move to 3C. And that will be for Dr. Gallagher. We're gonna talk about amend and approve updated 2024-2025 board meeting calendar.
Okay, so I shared this with you, that since this is an election year, we need to have, we have to have the organizational meeting no sooner than Friday, December 13th. Which is, that's just the rule. We also have to have the first interim budget approved by December 15th. So the most logical thing to do is to have two meetings. What I'm recommending is that we have the December 12th meeting as planned, and that the organization, that would be Nancy's last meeting. And then the first meeting for the new board would be on December 13th. Since that's a Friday, we could do that at noon. And then the only things that would be on that agenda would be swearing in, who else is new? Isabel's new,
Yeah.
new again, and Peggy. And then we would vote on the organizational, the list of all the things. So
What about the Friday lunch? What?
That's happening at the regular.
that would happen the night before.
Okay.
And I know there's a whole other things like, well, what are we gonna do about coast to coast? What are we gonna do about like, if one of our board members happens to be elected to city council, what would we do in all those cases? I recommend we wait for all that, because there might be some shifts to the spring calendar. Let's wait until the November meeting, the second November meeting to decide all that.
Okay, so do we have a motion for 3C, which is to amend it and approve the updated calendar as it is right now on the agenda?
Move to approve the updated calendar.
And do we have a second? Okay, with that, everybody.
So a quick comment. So because it's late right now, I don't wanna have a discussion now, but my question was the question about just, so I agree, like, we can't we don't make official dates till later, but schedules sometimes fill up or people plan trips. And so maybe over email, maybe like my opinion is you could email us
Some
options later in February and March, so we can just pencil, like have a couple weeks, like I can't reserve my whole, not that I plan lots of things, but it would be nice to have 2 or 3 penciled weekends, like it will be one of these 3, please keep those reserved. And then in November. So anyways, I would love to do that by email, if we could do that. Just kind of have the dates, so if things come on the calendar, it's like, well, I've got to keep it blocked.
Well, and I think it's like scenarios too, right? So you might have more governance if there's.
Do we have any member of the community who wish to speak on the, this agenda item?
Oh, yeah, before we go.
Okay.
No, that's okay.
Do it, this is okay.
Do you want to
Just include that later.
You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm sorry, I didn't think of this earlier, but that is a 12:30 pickup for my kindergartner, and I was wondering if we could do that earlier on Friday. So I don't have to pay for childcare.
I didn't want anyone else to get this, but I wanted to have a nice lunch.
I would love to have lunch. We can have brunch or something.
Brunch.
Yeah, that sounds great. I just don't want to pay for childcare if we don't have to. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. And with that.
Maybe there's a friend out there who wants to watch your kid for you.
Randy, does this have its own one?
It says, yeah,
Okay, so I need to amend it.
yeah,
Sure.
What time hypothetically would an audience member want to go? 10 a.m.?
I thought you'd be.
Well, I mean, I have my thing, but I can just leave my thing late. I think it's just my ongoing meeting that we were talking about yeah, so it's just my ongoing meeting that I
Okay. It's okay.
Okay, so I amend my motion to the 10 a.m. to account for 10 a.m. meeting on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And that's gonna be okay with all the logistical rules and that.
Do you second that? Okay. So are we ready to vote or we need more discussion on this? Okay, so let's vote, everybody who would like to approve.
Oh, wait, yeah,
So she amended.
Yes,
Maybe you second that?
yes, you did. Please say aye.
Aye.
And with that, it passed with the new amendment to the amendment.
And then we'll get emailed the some potential government statement.
And with that, we move to our.
We do 5 minute break.
Yes, we can then have a break. It is 7:19. Let's be back not later than 7:30.
Let's do 7:25. Yeah, okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, never make it 5. We always say 5.
I bet we can.
That's why you say 5. Yeah. Okay. Let's say.
It's a crap.
Thank you, Madam.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, so it's gonna make you less. There was one that I put we still have a board at.
Should remember. It was like. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It makes sense.
That is what I selected.
Very good.
Oh, yeah. It's like a little bit. I just.
It's the process, right?
We're not good. Everybody said we can get started.
Try.
It's so much.
And the essays, and they have tons of essays. There's like 7 essays. Less likely to like what you want. So we have. I think today we back this up. I think today was well, it should have been a while ago, but yeah.
Okay, so with that, is well, 7:27, I was gonna wait to 7:28, but with that, we're coming back, oh, we are meeting the superintendent.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's wait a minute.
He wasn't here.
He was here.
Well, at least, I mean, we.
Said something chocolate and then left.
Oh, I used that. I forgot it's a study session, they have that chocolate.
Okay, so it's still 7:27 and we got 28. And with that, we are back in session. And our next item in the agenda is for a strategic plan update. And for that, well, we have the whole team, so take it.
Okay, before jumping in, I want to kind of set the, the framework for what we're doing and kind of some pieces that we're gonna go along so we can get through the information. We have an ask that is, allow us to kind of go through the content. We won't do questions immediately at the end if that's possible, unless we're seeking clarification if that's possible. And then we would like Mr. Tu to follow with this content that actually is kind of our accountability card, if you will, to the data that you will have seen. And then that way we can kind of then conclude with questions and clarifications with both of us. So we would ask that we do that process because our fear is that if we stop too often through the content, we may not get to all your questions and we want to be able to do that so that we can clarify and move forward if we need to. That process to work. All right, so with that, we are, our earlier discussion really shapes the framework for this conversation right now. This is the task which we have to keep our promise to our students. And so this conversation is about where we are in that. So we've kind of set that purpose already. We have given you a lot more data based upon the ask that the board has asked. So we try to frame that in the right way, emphasizing the populations that we want to emphasize or students.
That's the clicker.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it wasn't working.
Turn it on.
Again? Yeah.
Patience, slow.
I don't have a lot of that right about now, but we'll work through it. And then going from there, then we want to connect the data to our priorities. And what we've emphasized for this school year, which heavily is around our attendance or mathematics and the English language arts. We will attempt to highlight some of the key trends that we've been seeing and then try to build a narrative, kind of give some context and details around the data and what we see happening with regards to programs in our schools currently. And so with that, we're going to transition right into talking about some of that ELA and math data. Mr. Watts, would you like to click on your own, or would you like me to do it for you?
You can click.
Okay.
It's fine, because I just put chalk in my mouth. I just do this now. I was trying to time it. I thought there was one more slides.
I make a comment while you're reading. I was reminded, I was talking to a teacher today about data stuff, and I was like, oh, Jonathan Watts is great. And I was remembering, like, my first year of being on the board, they also then knew you at Ellis too, right, and stuff. But I just remember, like, one time at some event, I just was talking to them, I'm like, can you figure out how to clone yourself? I'm like, I want one of you at each school site. So how have you figured that one out yet?
I've gotten further. Almost there. It's coming. It's coming soon. Okay. Okay. So starting with CAST data, and you can see the overall. So this is ELA. Something that I was actually just looking up beforehand, just because we get occasional notices when CAST reports are released statewide and things like that. And so one of the things that came out was the ELA and math overall at the state level too. So to give some context for kind of where we sit with that, our overall, we're around 54% proficient, and the state was around 47% in ELA. And then in math, we were at 49% proficient, and the state was 34%. So that's like the overall. So we're tracking pretty well, still beating the state in both of those areas, ELA and math, which is pretty good. But we still do have work, as you can see, to do with our Hispanic students, English learners, and then our students with disabilities. And the category of students with disabilities, when it comes to CAST, the count is anyone at all that has a primary disability, IEP. So it can be, it's both students that are in general education, but may receive some different supports, and students that might be in SDC, but are taking the CAST.
Is that acronym new? Do we usually use SWD for students with disabilities? Okay,
Yeah.
I first time I remember.
It wasn't even me.
Yeah, if there's, I could spell it out, but sometimes when there's so many graphs, it just becomes too long, and we'll come over that way. This is the NWEA math data. So our local assessment, NWEA, is given, we introduced, now we have a different test within the same platform suite for kinder through second grade. So now we have everyone in the NWEA suite, which allows us also to be able to better compare our data moving forward. So this is just site by site comparisons. You've seen this before. We can go to next. So seeing some improvement here also in the middle schools. So middle school math, we've had slight improvements at both sites, NWEA. There was also a question, I think, in the board packet about the kind of perceived discrepancy between NWEA and then CAST. The main difference between why NWEA often looks higher, and I think in some of the graphs that you'll see there significantly higher, is because it also, that for the math one, it includes first and second grade who don't take CAST. And as you go up, unfortunately, those gaps get wider and wider. So our first and second graders, the second you throw that math data in, it does increase our proficiency there. Okay, and then looking at, so year over year, now looking at the beginning of the year. So this is kind of exciting. This is, if you remember last year, we started to shift in our primary grades looking at foundational skills. And we were really making an effort to assess all students in kinder first and second, and then we've been slowly expanding who's also assessing in upper grades, and now all the way to middle school looking at foundational skills. But something that we were lacking the last couple of years was something to give us a picture in those primary grades of who's reading and who's working on foundational skills still. So we have a new assessment that we're giving for K through second grade in literacy, and it's an NWEA math fluency. It's an adaptive assessment. So what it does is on the computer, they start with some simple sentence reading, And then based on their success or challenges that they have there, it either adapts over to oral reading fluency. So it captures literal comprehension, their fluency rate, lexile, and accuracy, or it takes them over to the math foundational skills suite. And so it goes through phonics, phonemic awareness, listening comprehension, and then it goes down there. So it's kind of neat. So what it does overall, we're now actually able to see in each grade level, K1, 2, an approximation of who's reading, who's still working on those foundational skills, which is something that the principals really were looking for in the last couple of years. But we were transitioning from Fontes-Pinnell benchmark assessment to this. And we had a really heavy focus on core phonics instruction last year. So this is neat that we're actually going to be able to get this picture better now of who's reading and who's still working on foundational skills. So this again is showing the same thing, the foundational skills being the bottom part of the graph, and then the top part, those are the students that are in the oral reading section of this, so are a little bit further along. And then I wanted to hand out something to give context for this, because I realized afterwards I could have done this graphic better. What this and the next couple slides is showing, we could just kind of pass 2 papers per person. 2 per person. Down, that's down, it's like wearing glass again. Very bad. I think I printed enough.
It's real test of procedures and routines.
Let's see how far this goes. Great, look at that. Well done, well done. Okay. Anyone want one back here? Sure. I made one myself, so I can reference it. So what this is showing, so the thing that I didn't have in here that's really important for context is that the students, the graphs that you're seeing right here, this is of the students that are working on the foundational skills.
Oh, thank you.
And so that makes a huge difference when you're looking at 1st and 2nd grade. So kindergarten, all of the students are working on foundational skills. So this is all of kindergarten. Here's the distribution, how they're doing in listening comprehension and phonological awareness. But can you go to the next slide? So when it goes to 1st grade, if you see here, now we're zooming in. So both of those graphs are only applying to the students that are still working on their foundational skills. So of the 83% of 1st graders that are working on foundational skills, this is their distribution. And it's a moving target because when you're looking at phonics skills in kindergarten, some of those skills haven't even been introduced yet. So if you know them, you're meeting standard. By 1st grade, there's an expectation that you have some of these skills to some degree. And then by 2nd grade, they've assumed that you've pretty much mastered them, even starting out at the beginning of the year. And so that's why there's kind of a perceived, if you're just looking at 1st grade, and then now skip to the next slide, show 2nd grade. So it looks like there's actually a gap, and that 2nd grade does worse in phonological awareness. But that's not quite the case, because if you look at the 2nd grade here, it's zoomed in on a much smaller subset of 2nd grade. It's only of those students that are still working on foundational skills. That's where they are. And inherently, if they're still working on these foundational skills in 2nd grade, they're going to be either like approaching or below for the most part, because meeting would have already mastered this. They'd be in the reading part at the top. So does that kind of make sense, the breakdown of why it looks here like 2nd grade isn't further as far along? But they actually are. So they've got 54% of them in the oral reading, and then the rest in the foundational skills. Okay, let me see. And then it's moving into 3.8. So really quick, I'm just going to tell you about just backing up to the K2. So the neat thing now that we're doing that's a change from previous years is they're giving this K2 math fluency assessment to the students. And then we're not doing the one-on-one assessment we did last year and the previous years on all of these individual phonics components with every single student, because some of them are doing fine in phonics. And so now we actually have a program that can screen out some of those students so that the time that teachers are spending is more on the students that need it the most. So we're hoping, and this is a big shift, because last year there were just one-on-one assessments for every single student. We didn't want to miss a single one because we didn't have something that would tell us, with better accuracy, like who should we be focusing our energy on. So now with this, it's an assessment that you can do all of your kids at once, assess all of them, and then be able to quickly determine who do I need to follow up in some of those phonics. So this is 3.8. NWA, ELA, so same assessment we've had in this, the last few years. Not a lot new here. We've seen some gains in math, but again, with our student groups, our focused student groups, they continue to be our focused student groups.
So in terms of program updates, in terms of program updates, we've had a number of celebrations. I'm going to just briefly go over them because I know you've seen the slides. We did implement Really Great Reading curriculum in K2 last year. We also implemented UFly, University of Florida Literacy Institute, which is an intervention for grades 3 through 5. And also last year, middle school was our first year of the Amplify ELA adoption. And what we saw in terms of successes is increased teacher confidence with reading intervention. Like John said earlier, like our previous assessment measures and also instruction, we were stalling out certain places, and teachers were like, I'm trying everything in my toolkit, it's not working. So we see increased teacher confidence. We've seen increased learning outcomes in K2 and 3-5. And then the consistent curriculum at middle school is helping us have better collaboration, because when we have a variety of curriculums, it can be hard to have collaboration and really talk about data, talk about student achievement, and really plan together. The graphs on the right-hand side is a sample of data that we used last year before we had pieces that are in place this year. But I think it's a good example of where we were tracking because you didn't get to see this last year. So the first chart is the beginning of the year, all those small skills that we were looking at for phonemic awareness. And really, if they were red, they weren't there yet. If they were yellow, they were approaching. If they were green, they were there. Then if we looked at trimester 1, after we implemented Really Great Reading, this is what we call a green out, as named by Carly Sturm at Lakewood. But we were moving kids through progressive phonics skills, and this is where we were stalled out previously. So that's what this chart represents. Okay, next slide.
What are the numbers though? I'm not understanding.
It's the number correct in each of the components. So there's component A, it's just uppercase letters, component B, lowercase letters, and then there's CVC words. So it varies how many it's out of. Most are out of, there's 26, a lot are out of 15, I think and then, the other one's consonants. However many consonants we have. Vowels, short and long, so take the A, E, I, O, U, and then times 2, because you have to ask, can we do the short sound and the long sound? So it varies, but those are just the numbers that they got correct.
Sorry, so I'm just there's I don't know how many, there's 10, it's looking at that core phonics part A, I don't know how many, but there's maybe 10 different numbers.
Yep. So we have
I'm confused, I'm isn't that just one test?
This might be one student. This would be one student's test. This out of 20, this is a sample.
It's out of 26 letters. Each row is actually a student that was assessed. So row number 1 looking across on the bottom chart.
Each row is a sample of one
student. Yeah. So he got 20, he knows all 26, uppercase, lowercase, looks like he knows all his consonants.
I got it now. Each one across is a student. So the top one is student A, and then we're gonna try 1, that's the same student.
Yeah, and the color coding is based on proficiency bands that we have. So if you know a certain number of letters by a certain time of year in that grade level, then it's,
So if I'm a teacher, I would have a list of 20 of those rows.
Yeah.
Okay, got it, thank you.
In terms of lesson learned, we keep working on focusing what we're working on. We know that when we have multiple things that we're working on, it spreads us wider but a little thinner. When we can concentrate, then we have greater success. So that's something that we keep working on, how much bandwidth do we have in terms of supporting our teachers, making sure that they're on board and we're making progress. And then in terms of next steps for literacy, we're going to continue to build our literacy-rich TK classrooms. We're going to refine our implementation of UFly 3rd through 8th grade. Now, we keep working on best first instruction. So there's a piece where we refine our intervention, and also we know that if we have best first instruction, we will have fewer kids that will need intervention. Amplify ELA implementation will be in year 2 at middle school. So we keep working on what does that best first instruction look like. And we keep working on a roadmap and a timeline to roll out other components that address literacy across all of our students' needs. So what does that look like in terms of best practices? Are there additional assessments that we need to target specific skills? And are there curriculums that we need, again, for specific skills and intervention? In terms of math program updates, also a number of celebrations. As coined by Jeremy, we have been reverse trending with our math data, which is very exciting because previously we might have actually seen declines in our math data or stagnant. So the fact that we're seeing gains is big movement for us. And we're seeing small improvements with our Hispanic student group and also our EL student group with our state data. Want to give a lot of praise and kudos to our staff at elementary for their implementation of illustrative math last year. They implemented with integrity, they learned new ways of doing. This time last year, we were feeling the growing pains. We hadn't implemented a new curriculum for a number of years in this way. And at the end of the year and this year, they're seeing the gains. We hear from our teachers, it was so great to see what the kids did last year. We're cooking with gas now, but they're seeing the benefits. So really kudos to our staff who worked very hard for implementation. And we are currently in last year, our middle school math pilot celebration, and we're currently working on implementation year 1.
What is cooking with gas?
That's a good question because I'm an English learner, so I often use phrases wrong. But I think it's a phrase of like that you're cooking faster because gas heats fast.
Momentum. Okay. You have momentum. You're accelerating.
Gas was also.
Yeah, excellent.
Electric.
Versus
Oftentimes I use these phrases inaccurately and they're like, it's not a bag of worms. I'm like, it's not, it's a container of worms. It's a can.
He's like, let's go, I don't know where we're going with this, let's handle it, got it, yeah, what did he can?
Okay, it's a can. You know, English learners can make a lot of growth too. A lot of flexible thinking. In terms of math program updates, same pieces, like aligned focus areas, making sure that we're continuing to put all our resources, supports our student growth and supports our teachers. The other piece that we know with math is that at elementary school, many of our teachers come from liberal arts backgrounds, so literacy backgrounds, and so our staff have identified needing support with developing their own mathematical thinking, because Common Core mathematics, these are very different ways of thinking about math, and if we learn how to do math via the algorithm, that doesn't always mean that we have a good understanding of the concepts behind it, so we want to work to build that with our staff members. So next steps, we're going to keep working on implementing year 2 of illustrative math. We're going to support year 1 of amplified and illustrative math at middle school. And then we could keep working to use our curricular assessments to monitor student progress and growth. So that alignment of focus happens through best practices, curriculum, and assessments, and matching those up so that way we can make sure that we're having long-term change and that we're tracking across our school district and school sites.
Okay. I'm going to take some time to talk about our students with disabilities, SWD, if you would. When we look at the scores for CASP and NWEA, and as John referenced, the group of students that go into that category are very diverse. It's a student learning to say an S sound, but is otherwise fully accessing the curriculum. It could be a student with very pronounced processing delays that are, they have a learning disability. It could be students with ADHD or attention and memory that makes accessing learning that much more of a challenge. So as we look at the students that we're reporting on and how to focus on the challenges, it's really a multi-tiered approach. So as we look at all those different groups that I spoke to you about, here's some things that we're doing with our special education teams to attack the challenge on many fronts. So one thing that we've started this year is all of our SDC and RSP teachers are in a job alike. So they get together on TLDs, they share resources, we share expectations, and what's grown out of this is this amazing sharing between job alikes across all of our campuses. It's just been blossoming into something beautiful. So that's 4 times this year. Speaking with our principals, they've incorporated our SDC and RSP teachers in the data teams with the Gen Ed
at a higher level than ever before. We do see that the quality of inclusion is advancing on all of our campuses, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about inclusion shortly, but exposing our students more and more into the gen ed setting is helping them access the grade level vocabulary and curriculum at a higher level. We've definitely standardized our intervention curriculum where we had teachers several years ago kind of make it up their own or doing a hodgepodge or choosing teachers take teachers. And right now we have very specific intervention curriculum that everyone's trained on, and the expectation is that's what we use. We've worked really hard to retain our quality staff. We spend a lot of time building relationships, supporting them. Special ed teachers are not an easy group to find and retain. So we work very hard on building relationships and supporting their needs. And one thing that's really been exciting with our speech team, because a large number of our students represented are speech-only IEPs. So how do we leverage that group and their intervention to increase their academic access? Really exciting. I was just in the speech meeting. I popped in this week, and there was a whole discussion going on about writing goals on IEPs. And they were talking about, oh, when I target this comprehension goal, I go to the 4th grade classroom, I grab the textbooks that they're using in the curriculum, and I'm using grade level materials to work on their receptive language skills. So they're really developing that alignment with the gen ed curriculum. Our staff development day in January will be all about literacy-based instruction for speech and language pathologists. So we're really hitting our students with disabilities, accessing from many different angles. One thing that we've done this year is we're getting better at systems and structures to even look at the scores for our students with disabilities. One thing that, John, do you want to share with PowerSchool and RSP teachers, the change that we just made?
So for years, because resource teachers have an ever-changing caseload, so they have a pretty stable group of kids they work throughout the school year, but sometimes they have some added or some that may leave. So the caseload changes a lot, but what they're doing is supporting with the gen ed curriculum. And so for years, as far as I have known, they haven't had the kids connected to them in PowerSchool, and it seems like a really small technical thing. But with the way that I kind of distribute different curriculum and apps with so many things moving online, it made it really disjointed where they had to kind of reach out to their LRS, they would reach out to me and say, hey, I'm trying to get them access to the student. We'd have to kind of investigate, okay, what grade are they in? Let me see what level of access you need. So I worked with the admin assistants at the sites, and they're now rostering the kids directly to them in PowerSchool. And if someone else gets added to their caseload, they just add them in there. And then that way, the system I have that's set up by, it's like a rules-based system, and it assigns curricular apps and different things to them based on their grade level, based on the teacher and what's there. So now the RSP teacher gets access to all those apps just automatically. So any kid that gets put in their class, they have there. It also makes it a lot easier to just directly see more student information on them. So if they go into any of our systems, they're now connected to their caseload, so they can actually monitor what's happening in gen ed. Because that was another problem, that sometimes they would reach out and say, hey, can I see a report card, or can I see what they're doing there? So this way it gives them much more open access to see what their students are doing.
And I just want to add one more way we're, on the last slide, how we're really working with it is at our sites, our school psychologists really lead and manage and look after the special ed team. And for their professional goals this year, they are running data meetings, and we're focusing on the IEP goals, what's the progress, how quickly can we pivot, what's successful, what can we change, and how does the NWEA and the report card tie into how we're going to set the goals on the IEP. So it's kind of exciting right now. And I would be remiss if we didn't stop and talk about our extensive needs students, and I'll explain what this benchmark is. For our students with extensive needs, they're on alternate assessment, alternate curriculum. So they're not taking the NWEA, they're not taking the CAS. It's a very small percentage of our students. It's typically around just over 1% of our student body. Their growth is important as anyone else's. And so this slide is, there's a tool called the SANDI. And I wanted to share this data instead. And so it's a more accurate picture of our student skills than the California alternate assessment would be. So Sandy is Students' Annual Needs Determination Inventory, although it's given twice a year. It's given kindergarten through 8th grade, and it measures many things, but in Sunnyvale, we're looking at reading, writing, math, and communication. So the main thing about this is if you look at there's fall to spring, fall to spring, fall to spring. And it's rather a developmental survey, like the DRDP might be. And so what you want to see is just growth from fall to spring, fall to spring, fall to spring. Because then the students go on to 2nd grade or 3rd grade, and there's new expectations at each grade level. So in this case, it's a very positive because we are seeing that they're making growth throughout their academic year. So that's just an alternative benchmark that we use.
So like a fall to spring, like that's one kid.
Yes, that's the kids in the same grade level, and that's all of our kids that took it showed growth. You can see from fall to spring in reading, writing and math stayed, it depends, and then communication.
Yeah.
So that's just showing their growth throughout the year. Kindergarten through 8th.
It's all of them.
Kindergarten, yes, that's all of them. I want to recognize our Sunnyvale Promise and how that applies to our extensive needs student. Every student is known by name, strength, and need, ready to excel in high school and beyond and lead a life of joy and purpose. Focusing on and beyond. We think about preparing our extensive needs students for success after Sunnyvale. We start in preschool, which is what this graph represents. Preschool, we work on social skills and communication. In elementary school, we're going to start preparing them for life after high school with life skills curriculum, and we're starting on job skills. I'm going to have some photos in just a minute about how we're preparing them for life and job schools. Middle schools, life skills curriculum, job skills. We start community-based instruction and interest inventories. And in middle school, we get special funding for 7th and 8th graders. It's called Workability. We use those funds this year already. The students did a walking field trip to the market. They purchased food. They took it home. They cooked it the next day. And so they're learning the whole cycle through the Workability funds of how you take care of yourself and be more self-sufficient. We've used funds from Workability to purchase some appliances that students see in their home. So you know how children have class jobs. One of the class jobs is to vacuum. And so that is a student's job, part of the school community, and we purchased the vacuum. We also have some student-run businesses. I'll show you pictures in a moment. But think about the math, communication, writing, the social skills that are embedded in these class businesses. And so it's setting them up for success past high school. And then when they get to high school, they've got the social skills curriculum. They're mirroring what we do. They're just working on some transition planning and a little more independent life skills. So I want to show you these pictures. Focus on the left for a moment. At Cherry Chase and Vargas, we have a coffee cart business. And if you see the little girl on the left, she's having the teacher punch a frequent purchaser card. This is a child that a year ago would hide under the table when an unfamiliar adult came into the classroom. This is a child who is talking to an unfamiliar adult and working with her. And when we do the coffee cart business, we have the speech and the occupational therapist embedding the students' goals during that time. It's once a week. Goals are embedded in the activity, and it helps them talk to adults they don't know well. Children learn, in this case, and we've seen it, how do I use professional language with an adult versus what I'm doing in the classroom with my peers. So they're learning to code switch professionally out in the business world. And there's a little boy right there on the top. He's pouring some creamer into the coffee. This young man now had a purpose to his communication. And what we've seen him is reduce time on his talker because he doesn't need it. He's starting to become verbal because he has a purpose to his communication. So it's just been amazing. Now on the other side is our middle school. And this year they're going to be visiting off-campus sites, they'll go to a pizza parlor, they'll see behind the scenes how different jobs are run. But one thing that's been really exciting for our students in middle school is with the growth of online stores, these craft-based activities provide income. We have a student that learned a craft in the classroom last year. She has her own Etsy store and she's making money, and she's in middle school. So another thing, a benefit of the life skills curriculum and the student-run businesses, we're seeing reduced elopement. Students are spending more time in the classroom. Just recently at CMS, there was a PTA-sponsored event. The students did a bake sale. They made cookie dough, they cut it out, they sold it at the event. They did a meet and greet almost with no teacher support, just minimal. Lastly, we had in the bottom corner, we had a business called Congratulations. And so they wove leis for graduation and they sold them and then they invest the money back into their business. We also want to increase, it's very important to our district and to the board to increase inclusion time of students. And so this is a lot of data and I just want to explain it to you. We have some state guidelines about how much students with IEPs should be included into the classroom. And so on the top, there's a target that this year, 67% of our students with IEPs need to be in gen ed 80% of the time or more. And so last year, we met the target. We were exceeded the target. Remember, it was 64%. We were at 68.5. This year, the end of year target 67. We're at 65. It starts out lower at the beginning of the year. Kids transition in. We've got 30-day IEPs. As we get to know the children and set routines, that inclusion will expand shortly. So I'll be excited to show you the end of year data if you're interested. The bottom number, you want to see it go the other way. So the bottom is really applicable to our extensive needs students mostly, because these are kids that we need to have less than 40% of the time in a special ed classroom or separate setting. So this is one we're working on a little more of a challenge. We want to really get those students integrated, the students with extensive needs in the gen ed more and more. So it's a state measure that we're held accountable for. Another thing is about inclusion is co-teaching. And so we want an inclusive and nurturing environment for our students, one of our LCAP goals. So co-teaching is not push-in services. Push-in services when an RSP teacher goes in and gives services. Co-teaching is when a special education and a general education teacher are teaching partners. It could be a period, or it could, if you're in middle school, or it could be the whole day, like in preschool. So right now could you go back please? Right now in the middle school, we have a total of 12 co-teaching teams between our two campuses. Math, English language arts, social studies. CMS is really hitting hard on their math co-teaching model right now. We serve 80 students. In that model, they're getting their special education students in a co-taught setting, special education services. For TK, we started something new this year. At Lakewood, we have 2 gen ed TK classrooms, and we put students in that classroom that would have normally been into a special day classroom. In those 2 classrooms, we have a special education teacher, and she's half in each classroom. So she's 3 days, 1 week in the classroom, 3 days the next week in the other. And so these kids are in an inclusive setting, being served by general education and a special education, and that's our first year doing it. So we'll see how it goes. And then in preschool, we enroll kids as they turn 3 all year long. We have 2 co-taught preschool classrooms. And so right now we just have 8 students who would normally have been in a special day class in that setting. Really exciting that last year we had the same program. 9 kids went on to general education, TK, and they're successful today. It's a very successful program. And is that my last slide? That's it.
So I'm going to take a moment to talk about attendance and behavioral achievement data. Everything that we've talked about so far, the wonderful stuff that occurs in the classroom when the teacher has the tools and is doing their work, is the goal. What happens when we don't have that student in that seat undistracted by either behavior or lack of attendance is where I'm going to focus right now. Two main areas that we'll look at: comparative year to year, 23-24 to 24-25 year to date, meaning last Friday. Chronic absenteeism for our significant subgroups. Also, we'll look at the same comparison for suspensions and referrals. I'll take a brief time to define those two so we can know what the difference is. First things first, chronic absenteeism is when a student's missed 10% or more of the school year. As the executive summary kind of mentioned, this is a rolling number, meaning the first 2 weeks of school, if you miss one day, you're a chronically absent student. Are you in danger of needing truancy intervention? Likely not, but a huge number of students would be chronically absent if we pulled all of our data in that first 2 week window. What's showing here, this is ongoing right now. Chronic absenteeism is the red indicator, and this is by grade level in Sunnyvale School District. Trending towards or nearly chronically absent, meaning students are 7 or 8% of the school year have missed days. Right now, being in the 80% of students nowhere near chronically absent is a good indicator, but wanting to see it broken across grade level. Transitional and preschool, there is difference because some parents do keep their children home at a different rate. I have a TKer and I have seen that myself in my own home. It's a different experience when you're taking a TK student versus a 5th grader or a 6th grader. If we can go forward, looking district-wide chronic absenteeism, this is an end of year indicator, meaning we've had 181 school days and students have missed 10% of the school year. We're trending downwards. A 2% drop is, I think we calculated it, Dr. Gallagher, as 100 and something students that were in the seats for longer than they were the year before. State average right now, 26% of students enrolled in California are chronically absent from school. That was the.
This is very good.
It is. This is the end of year. Thank you, Muti. I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
It's really very, very good.
Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. It is a tremendous amount of work on the part of the site attendance teams to move these markers. There is an emotional component to it that is unexpected. You have parents who say, well, look, the November Disneyland trip is something we've been doing for a generation. And you touch that and say, this is when we're doing our first entry into the curricular thing around literacy. And you navigate that as a school administrator and as a school outreach assistant or as a social worker, and it is difficult. All of us that have children know those times we've kept them home and know that it's justified. And we're not talking about those kids only. We're talking about kids who are severely truant and are missing 60, 70 days of school a year. Moving forward, these are the breakdown by school. It's tiny and I apologize, but overall, 7 of our 10 schools reduced chronic absenteeism last year. This occurred through a few different things, but if I could highlight Bishop Elementary, the 22% chronic absenteeism rate for 22-23 reduced to 9% last year. That isn't an error. Is it sustainable? Rob Felicano says yes. I was looking forward to see. The way they did this was personal interactions with families in crisis, not only around attendance, but knowing what was going on. And knowing attendance becomes part of the conversation. You don't open with attendance. You open with the teacher saying, we missed you yesterday. And that is what's happening at Bishop. Is it replicable? Yes, but attendance differences by school, there are different reasons families are gone. Just by way of a very small vignette, a family needing to leave and go to India because of a visa renewal issue, that takes 15 days. It's an unavoidable absence. Can we support the student in going and coming and give work? Yes. Can we just mark them present to do independent studies? No, because we need to make sure the right interventions are in place. But for 7 schools to reduce chronic absenteeism this close after the pandemic is heading the right direction. Doesn't mean we're there. Moving forward, by subgroup, 23-24 to 24-25, these are paired across the screen from left to right. The green are students that don't have absence issues, meaning they're not showing any kind of trigger point right now. The red are students that are chronically absent as of this data poll. Having a 9 to 13% chronic absenteeism rate is where we were this year. Is where we were last year. We do want to improve this year and end lower than we did last year. 2 or 3% would be great. 5% would mean we had aligned to where we really see that we're getting all the kids in that seat. Going to the next slide, this is where things get a little weird. There is another indicator that the state used. Chronic absenteeism is a state indicator. You've missed X number of days of school, divided by the total days, that's it.
And that's not, the state one is excuse, unexcused, any absence
Thank
falls
you.
under that one, right?
If you are absent because you are undergoing medical treatment and it's a fully excused absence, you are still listed as a chronically absent student on our state dashboard. That dashboard
It's
is
purely about kids in bodies.
correct, kids in seats.
Yeah.
Right. This indicator, 90% attendance or better, takes into account excused absences. So if you're following along, you can be chronically absent and on track for attendance. That is very strange because these two markers aren't meant to do the same thing. This marker is a good one. We want to know kids that, first off, chronically absent, we want to know kids that are missing that much school, no matter the reason. Do they need home hospital? Do they need a minimum day while the family crisis resolves? What is going on that they're missing that much? Yeah. This indicator is where we get kids, and Dr. Dean said it well, on our radar for our attendance teams and our teachers. Kids that are in the missing percentages. So yes, 96% of our kindergartners are on track for attendance. That 4 or 3.6%, 3.2%, where are they? What's going on? Are they being paid attention to? So this is a good indicator. Being in the 90s, especially the high 90s, is good because it means the students that aren't qualifying can get services. If you have hundreds of students not making it 90% of the time, you have an overwhelming problem as opposed to a targeting problem. I hope that comes across well. Moving on, for attendance specifically, what we're doing this year, we have a process at the school site. There are truancy letters that are required at certain intervals according to Ed Code. And then a student going through that gets referred to what's called SARB, the Student School Attendance Review Board, that meets at the district office. Our 3 things we're focusing on this year is increasing the regularity of the meetings at the school sites. We want to see every 2 weeks that a site attendance team is meeting and reviewing their caseload of kids that are chronically absent and at risk for attendance because of that 90% number. We also want to review the process sites are using for truancy notification. This can be tricky. What we found, some of our social workers who are the most successful will hold off on a truancy notification because a kid is improving. And we say, yes, we don't want to slam the parent. Parent got him there 3 days out of 5 last week, and the week before they didn't come at all. There's still 2 unexcused absences. That letter needs to get mailed. And the social worker's like, I'm gonna hold on to it. I don't wanna I wanna celebrate. And finding a way to celebrate and stay on process and on what we're doing is the trick. Everybody says, well, I'm gonna send it. And we say, no, we wanna keep the process going and contextualize it. Hey, this is a state following process. We are proud of you, but you do have to get your kid to school. Finally, what we're doing with SARB at the district is something that was a little different last year. We needed to increase our communication. If a school principal sent someone to the SARB committee, they could end up getting referred to the district attorney. They can be prosecuted for truancy. There's a court around parents being fined, getting resources, but it's a little punitive. We were not communicating well back to schools. So a principal sends us a student and we're working them. We're working with the family almost weekly. We're calling, we're holding meetings. We need to improve what principals heard we were doing. The idea was get them off the principal's plate so they can focus on students that are less at risk, but the principals need to know what's going on for that kid. We kind of underestimated the ownership the teams have of that kid's needs. And when they handed him off, we were like, you're done with him now, we got it. And that's not what they wanted. They want to know, how's it going for this kid? It isn't always a successful story. We have severely truant kids with major home systems that are contributing to that. And that can be difficult to share back because it's not always cheerful, but we do share back differently this year. Moving forward, behavioral referral. This is what we would think a minor incident. A student acts out in your class to a degree where they need a referral, meaning they leave the classroom, but they're not being suspended from school. These numbers are fantastic. This is students who are getting a referral no more than 2% of the days. The reason we do that is we want to allow for the referral process is a pretty healthy process for a kid to acclimate to a grade level. There's spikes. If anybody is curious, the highest referring grade in like every school in California is 7th grade. 7th grade, yeah. It's just everybody that has had a 7th grader does, yeah.
Higher than 8th grade, I thought 8th.
Oh, or 8th. It's like the terrible twos. Some kids not so much. The thing that this data does not show are our tier 3 high needs behavior students. We do not use the referral process for those students' behaviors. So a few reasons. First off, it can be completely disheartening and defeating. We want that data, but we don't put it in the same way. These kids have a behavior team or a BT that is working with them. We do log what behaviors they are exhibiting, but we don't give a referral or have a teacher give a referral every time a student who has a legitimate behavior need exhibits it. It's just overwhelming and we don't need to do that. Can we still find that data? Of course, but this is tier 1 level services for students, and these are their referral rates. Moving forward. So it gets difficult. 2 types of suspension we use, in-school and out-of-school suspension. A suspension is a violation of the Ed Code section that actually shows the standards for student behavior. Everything from smoking cigarettes to habitual profanity, those are suspendable offenses. There's no required suspension matrix in Sunnyvale, which is strategic. We don't have a document, and I don't think we will ever need to get to one, where a principal says, this student did this, these are the number of days they need to be suspended. That is the opposite of restorative practices, and we don't have that. 149 students, excuse me, I can say this right, 149 suspensions year before last, 186 last year, year to date this year, 5. This is not as much a celebration as we might think. Suspensions are cyclical and there's spikes, usually up against breaks and right after breaks. The thing that we have to clarify about this data, and the next slide especially, these are suspensions, not students. A single student can be suspended multiple times, and that is what we are seeing really in school. So we can look at data differently in a different context when we have the time to go deeper. A single student being suspended 5 times is showing as 5 suspensions in the data we're seeing today. The slide in front of you now is these same suspensions broken out by significant subgroup. We didn't correct, they're not disaggregated, meaning if a student has special needs, is a student with disabilities, and a Hispanic English learner, they're shown each time. So we didn't correct for you not having to kind of see all of the data there. The use of in-school suspension is still suspension. It's a lot more restorative. Not removing the school child from the community if we can is preferred, but we do count those. They're a suspension according to the state. There are criteria where we kind of use them differently, but we wanted to show them here and not have it look like we were hiding a student with an in-school. Yes?
So I just had a question about this one. So in the year-to-date column on the right, it says Hispanic, there were 5 all out-of-school suspensions.
Correct.
So of those 5, it says 3 were Hispanic students.
Yes.
1 was an EL.
Correct.
Hispanic ELs, that's 4.
So that number is a little bit off, what we're saying.
So I added
So it just
an
added
extra.
the 2
Darn it.
instead of,
It's an
that's
error.
where, that was my question, I'm like, something's off, like, I
Yes.
don't know.
That does make sense, which
I
means
think you just added, it's a different formula, right?
It is.
So that was my.
I wish John had pulled this data for me, but he did not. I did.
John has done it,
I think
you
it's
know,
just a
Eric.
formula. So, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Bridget.
Okay, because it's gonna change. So.
Right. Did you? Okay. Next slide, we did want to talk about one of
I
our.
have just one quick question.
Yes, please.
So like the 186 suspensions, if I get suspended for 3 days, does that show, is that 1 suspension or is that 3 of the 186?
It's
But
usually
3 days for 1 incident, right? So like I do one
The
thing.
3 suspended days is what usually shows up as 3 separate suspensions. I did not do it that way. This is suspension event. So it's a 3-day
Okay.
suspension is showing here as 1
So
suspension.
it's not 100, it's not like 186 school days missed.
No,
It could be way more than that.
A student suspension could be 2 days, 3 days,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Now, there's concrete limits, we don't suspend students
Yeah,
for
yeah,
10 days.
no, it's not that, but I just kind of wanted
Yes,
a
thank
general
you.
gauge, so that's suspension of that.
Yes. We do want to talk about our most vulnerable population, students receiving McKinney-Vento services who are experiencing homelessness. Last year's end of year homelessness number was 51 students. Some of these were co-students in the same family. And then this year to date, we have 38 families that have registered with us as experiencing homelessness. 95 of the McKinney-Vento students year to date are on track for attendance. That is remarkable. Last year I wasn't able to pull, we have a different analytics thing going on in PowerSchool, which is very useful. I wasn't able to get a year-to-date comparison for McKinney-Vento students. It is also cyclical with weather and housing. So I would want to keep this data point kind of in front of us as the year unfolds. And finally, what are we doing with student behavior? We have really solid numbers, we have trends we like, but what are we doing? The referral process and the service delivery for mental health supports was changed this year, meaning we are seeing kids not more often. We are being very careful about when kids are referred to outside services or when kids who have a behavior problem and an attendance problem that we see in MTSS can be referred for a mental health assessment. That we've changed. Parent engagement, according to what we found out of our equity series last year with our Latino parents, there was an ask for kind of more about school discipline and how it can inform what's happening in the home. So there's an event in December, and I believe the second is in February, around school discipline and behavioral supports and how they might be implemented in the home. So there's a little more equity between the two. And then finally, the biggest thing that we want to continue this year, how do we use MTSS well? It is a massive undertaking because MTSS captures so much. That's our system for tiered supports of students, that we're catching suspendable behavior early enough to do what's called in lieu of suspension, meaning restorative practices, recovering with the teacher, formed apologies, apology letters, things like that. They're not always appropriate, but when they are, equipping teams to do them before everybody's upset and exhausted with the student and suspending. Thank you very much.
And with that, now we're gonna talk about the accountability limit too, on kind of what we're doing to hold ourselves accountable with that. I'm gonna hold off on questions and Jesus will keep going for.
I actually want to lead off with just some kudos to for the data that Paul just showed. Those are quite impressive. It made me go back to I wasn't going to talk about this before, but it's unusual, the data. This is one of our districts in outside of Chicago. 37,000 students, about 52% Hispanic, about 30% white. That's their average, 38.5%. And that's improved in the last couple of years. So that's a large district, 35,000 plus students. I was just with this district in Oregon, week before last, 2,000 students, 30.2%. And I don't think I've seen anything this low in a few years. So the students are voting with their feet. And the fact that they're coming to school means it's a much better place for them to be than someplace else. So what are you doing? I mean, it's impressive. It's really, really, really very. I haven't seen this in years. Those kinds of numbers since COVID. And I can show you.
We had some
Amazing. I plan to start with three appreciations. So that was the fourth one. First one, you've heard me use the phrase, plan your work and work the plan. And last year was about planning the work. And what makes Sunnyvale really impressive, as soon as the planning was done, the implementation started also before the end of the school year. So kudos to the leadership team for actually wanting to turn the strategic plan into something meaningful. Second one is for teaching and learning. The roles on my team has been working with them. I want to just call out attitude and willingness that not too infrequently we'll have a district that went through this process, and then when it comes to implementation time, especially teaching and learning, they will want to keep on doing what they've been doing before, rather than really pivoting to do the strategic plan. And that's not been the case. We haven't experienced that here. And the third one is, Rose is not here. I hope the baby is here now. She went to labor about 3 hours ago.
I was wondering, I like, did you have her baby already? But
Yeah,
it's in process.
Around 5:30.
Is this her first baby?
Second one.
Okay, the first babies don't come out very often.
Yeah. So it's, I haven't spoken to her in about an hour and a half now, so maybe the baby's here. Just she wanted to. She wanted to go to know that why she's just fine.
That's a good.
Yeah.
So, my part of the,
Baby with an October 10th birthday.
yeah, the due date was about 11, so just one day, yeah. Almost there. She's excited. It's not over 2 years, but she's excited. So, a couple ways of positioning what I want to talk about. One is to just about the process of holding ourselves accountable. And then the second one is to share some examples of tools that the board might be interested in. And there are lots of different tools that we can use. We want to get some input from you about which ones you think would make sense for you. So nothing to really resolve tonight. It's more, review the options and then share a few examples and then take your questions and your feedback. I want to start with the next slide, please. I wish this was a bit higher magnification. Well, it's what we call our roadmap for discipline implementation. Right? Basically, it starts with the strategic plan at the top, right? And then the implementation begins with the second row. And the process encourages districts to use the calendar to drive the accountability. So at the start of the school year, what are we going to do? Every week, what are we going to do? Every month, every 6 to 12 weeks, roughly every cycle, and then mid-year and end of year. And at every point on the left-hand side, you use data to guide the process. So the start of the work with Sunnyvale was to work with our teaching and learning to define the priorities for the first year of implementation. And there are three, we go to the next one, please. Actually, yeah, you can stay there. Yeah, there are three priorities that have been identified. One is around attendance, the second is around math, and the third is around ELA. So, we have the 4 goals in the strategic plan, and each one of those goals has 3 measures. But we don't want to implement everything in year 1. So for the first year, it's 1 measure on that goal number 1, and 1 measure on that goal number 4. Okay, so that's the focus for this year. Am I okay so far? All right.
I heard.
Yes, please.
Do we have public comment cards for this?
For the presentation,
Before we talk. Okay, great.
Okay. So in terms of how to hold ourselves accountable, there are several ways to configure what we call the vital signs scorecard. Think of this as the dashboard. And this is actually a real district in New York State. In the first column are the goals in their strategic plan. Okay. So in their strategic plan, their first goal was about early years, building a strong foundation. Goal number 2 is their socio-emotional goal. Goal 3, which is on the second page, is about mastery of content. And goal number 4 is the transition goal. So they have defined some specific, they have the baseline for each one of the goals in their strategic plan. And this one we can do also, if we have a couple of configurations. So imagine 2 or 3 times a year, we come back to the board with an update on something like this. And then you can drill down, but the intent is to try to keep the 1 sheet of paper and to see, these are the goals we're focusing on, this is where we started, this is where we landed at a given point in time. And then you can drill down as deeply as you want. So that's one form of a scorecard of the dashboard. But the main point I really want to make is that everything is driven by the first column. And the first column has to be what's in the strategic plan, unless it's been modified. Okay. So column 1 drives everything. If we were to do this for Sunnyvale will do it for goal 1 and goal 4, because those are the priority goals for this year. Okay, and for the others, we may choose to just monitor them maybe more passively, or maybe just focus on the ones that you identify as priorities. You follow me so far? Okay, next page, please. So that's the second page of their metrics. Then in terms of the work of the teaching and learning folks, priority number 1, again, as I said before, is around attendance. They've defined their metrics for students, percent of regular attendance, 90% or higher. They've blown that already. Looking at the data, there's not a single student group that's lower than 95.7% at this point in time. So that it's early in the school year, it might go down, but from what Paul shared and the strategies in place, it will likely go up. So we've defined what the outcomes are that we're focusing on. What makes this impressive to me is that it usually takes us about 6 months to get the adults to commit to monitoring their own practices and to being able to measure it. And here we are, October, we have it for the district. And again, kudos. So we're not only monitoring what the kids are doing, but we've identified some professional practices. And then at the bottom of this, if you scroll down a little bit, please. Next page. Yeah, the yellow one. Then to go with the attendance, also what they're going to be doing, some specific tasks. So you have the metric for kids, metrics for the adults, and then the adult behavior or tasks or milestones that will be tracked on a regular basis. And we'll be joining Tasha, so I think once a month for about an hour and a half. So this is for attendance. Next page will be for math, and then for ELA.
I have just a quick question on that. I think the page you were just on so page 6.
Yes.
The first key task that like the due date was June 12th, but it looks like it's like an ongoing thing that shouldn't be happening. So I'm just a little confused by that. Is that a typo? Is that meant to be 25?
Maybe it's start date or something.
But June 12th is the last day of school next year, this year. So what does that mean that it's meant to be 25?
Yes, it is.
Because it's like we're doing it we're gonna do it every month, and so by the end
That is, yes, thank you.
Okay, it's not that, I just wanted to make sure, okay.
Oh, you run that data for?
John did not enter that data.
So these pages again define the work, and then we'll be monitoring them either using the scorecard sample I showed you, or this one that I think is at your desk. If you actually want to see where we are at this point, this is the status report as of October 8 or 9. Some of these Paul just presented also. Page 1 is the scorecard to date about attendance. First page shows by grade level. I'm sorry, the first chart at the top of the page by grade level. Second will be by grade level. I'm sorry, by student group. And again, I mean, nothing is below 92% on that page. That's quite impressive. On the next 2 pages will be the same focus areas for math and for language arts. So the main point I wanted to make is that we have a system for monitoring, identifying the goals for the year, monitoring them, and different ways of displaying the progress report, depending on what will be most useful to the board. Lots of different constructs for the dashboard. I'm going to stop there.
Down there. Okay, so we. Okay. So we're gonna start then with public comment with the 4A. So if there is any, I have 2 cards right now, but if there is any person online, this is the moment to raise your hand. And if there is any extra card, this is the moment to give it. With that, we're gonna start with Jessica Jarecki.
Hi, I'm Jessie Jarecki. I'm a parent at Vargas and SMS. That was a lot of information, so there's so many things I would love to talk about, but I'm gonna try to focus on a few key things. One, thank you so much for explaining the differences on that one graph. I'm thankful just that I came here just for that explanation, because when I looked at that data, I was horrified. So now I'm feeling a little better. But what I wanted to talk about was especially ELA. I'm very excited to see the improvements that have come so quickly, so drastically with the introduction of more phonics education and more curriculum. And I think a large part of that is because the other curriculum is F&P, and that my experience with that has been absolutely horrendous. I was in a different school before I came to Sunnyvale, and I watched F&P practically destroy my daughter's reading by having her look at the picture instead of reading the words, having her guess the words instead of reading the words. She had to have have reading intervention in first grade, even though she was testing in math a grade ahead. So, and now I pulled her out, or I went way hardcore with phonics with her. And now this morning I woke her up, or went to go wake her up to go to school, and she was reading a book in her room. So what I'm saying is, it's great that we're moving away from F&P. I would like, if it's possible, to move faster, because as you're already seeing, getting away from it is helping everyone. The more you could get away from it, the better. Anyway, so that's one. Two, I wanted to talk about math, especially with the conversation that was earlier about the middle school curriculum. And my big concern going through the Sunnyvale School District right now is how weak the lower grade math curriculums appear to be. My son is in third grade. He is able to divide 1,000,000 by 200 in his head. He is able to do fractions and decimals, and his take-home homework today was single-digit addition. I am not kidding. I can show you it. It's color in. It is what I would have expected him to do in kindergarten, and he is in third grade. When we see kids not succeeding at later math, it is because of the level of math that they're learning and having to relearn and having to relearn. We have to find some way to help these kids learn more challenging math than single digit in October in third grade. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, our next commenter is Gita Polakota. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. It was a lot of data, like Josie said. Very insightful. I would have liked to see a little bit more granular data, but overall, what I'm understanding is the newer math is causing a problem for neurodivergent kids. According to our special director, who has been phenomenal, and her innovative approaches and trying to help all the kids, inclusive classrooms at a TK level. These are going to help for the kids overall in learning from peers. And I was studying about Paul Slayton in the previous servicing, how KLAs is helping build those peer interactions, which is also required for our new math curriculum, illustrative math. These are all great, but we should recognize that illustrative math has two components of it that are going to be very difficult. One is comprehending a question, and then the second thing is comprehending a question and expressing their thinking in their words, expressive skills. And one of the core areas that we recognized from Linda's sharing is that we have a problem with majority of our kids having speech and language as a major disability listed in their IEPs. This is a problem. The second thing is peer interaction for solving problems. Majority of the kids with ASD or neurological differences have difficulty interacting with a peer in a meaningful way, and solving a problem that requires strategy also requires working memory. Working memory is a temporary memory. For example, if I want to explain 5 in a row, okay, if I do the math this way, I will get to 4 here. Okay, then how do I approach it? Can I do it this way? Then they still have to remember that this strategy one that they used has not worked or has worked. And then they have to think about the second strategy. This is called working memory. And these kids, it is known, research is everywhere, these kids have differences in working memory. And I'm really concerned that the math will put these kids at a major disadvantage. Unfortunately, I was not aware of illustrative math when it was being adopted. And I mentioned about this after it is adopted. There are questions in illustrative math that explain thinking. Like, for example, my son had a homework where they were given graphs of 2 students having different numbers of toys or whatever, and then they were asked, think of 2 questions to come up with that. My son is dumbstruck because, neurodivergent kids think of, they're very concrete in their ideas. You need to know clearly what is expected of you before you can ask them a question. I just don't understand how this can work in that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any comments online? Okay, so with that, there is no action, so nothing to approve. So with that, we can start our comments for the board. We want to come, down the road, Nancy?
So I really like the scorecard for the shot, but I would like to see the big picture too, of how students who are with us from PK going through are doing. Because this is, once again, a snapshot, and truly the groups are not the same year to year. Even within a context of quarter to quarters, there's some movement that's going too. So somewhere in this cycle, it would be nice to have that larger, bigger picture that may be more illustrative, especially if some of our subgroups are how are we really doing and being successful.
So essentially
building over time.
Following students as a cohort.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll say other concepts, but it's that big picture that I think is missing, and that this might continue to keep us on the track and something that we can be able to celebrate while we're still trying to figure out and nuance areas of challenge.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to pull back up. Question. Well, while it's pulling up for my one question, this is just like a small one. So this is for you, Paul. When I was like going through the truancy, right when you're like mentioning, when I was looking at the presentation of the truancy letters, and you mentioned it just now, which I'm sure you guys are aware of this, and it's always a tricky space. But this is like, I have had issues with our truancy letters for quite a while. I've only gotten it one time, but like I've had friends who've gotten them and then who share their feelings of like it feels very adversarial, right? It feels very, and I know it's tricky because some people respond to like fear of like, but that's not really how we want to lead, right? We don't want to lead fear-based, right? Like fear-based is not actually an effective long-term. It might get immediate results, but not change. So anyways, I don't know if it's changing, but that's just a space that I would love to see like, yes, and it's not kind of the way you were talking, it sounds like maybe we are changing a little bit of like, the letter has to go out, but how do we make that letter sound like we want to work with you, not you're in trouble because you haven't brought your kid and you need to bring your kid and I mean, it's not saying you're a bad parent, but that's the message the parents are receiving is, I'm a bad parent because my kid's not in the school. And I'm a strong person, like when I did get the letter, like I was like, well, I feel okay because we were on a family trip.
Yeah.
But I actually then started realizing like, oh, like people who aren't having strong feelings as I do, like that would be very, anyway, so that was just my little.
Thank you. You're not the only
My
one.
little soapbox about the truancy letters.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and then this is pop up. Are you laughing at me?
I remember you let me know.
Oh, for sure.
So do I.
But yeah, but I've had like for years friends talk about it, and yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, so my question that, I sent it late, so that's why, board, you didn't see it. But was for slide 37, I just had interested in hearing a little about what staff has done or is planning to do as it relates to the higher proportion of suspensions happening with Hispanics.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've started having conversations about that, and I'm just curious.
It's been an ongoing data point at again, that's an ongoing statewide one. So there's a couple of different ways. The first and most important way is not having a zero tolerance policy. So there is no mandated suspension. There are mandated suspensions for severe behaviors. Yeah. We have assistant principals and principals that are constantly contextualizing behavior and not suspending, thinking it's functional. There are times suspension is for the school community to have a reset, but that case management of suspension is what we've seen. That is the way to do it. Does that mean Hispanic students, especially males in middle school, act out disproportionately to the general school community? They do. We don't want to reduce suspension, we want to reduce suspendable incidents. We want to reduce behaviors. Sometimes suspension is the appropriate outcome, but that doesn't mean it's right. It means what did we miss upstream with the family, with the student in 4th, 5th grade, not seeing that there was something we maybe couldn't have fixed about that incident, but something that was a trend. Now, that's what we do with students that are being suspended, specifically Hispanic students, and more specifically, Hispanic male students.
Yeah.
The Equity Summit last year was a great way to start the process of being in better communication with families. This year, implementing what they asked us to be doing is the plan, and really keeping the dialogue open so we're not reacting to suspendable behavior the same way. Do we say, well, we're going to refuse to suspend a Hispanic student because the number is there? No, because we do need to see there's a time for that to be functional. But we also have principals and APs who know we're going to talk about that number. It's not just, hey, it is what it is. We want to hear what happened pre-suspension for this family, and was it enough?
Yeah, and it's not that we don't just want to lower suspension numbers, we want to lower behaviors, right? We want kids to be successful. So it's not just, oh, we're just not going to suspend you and then it looks better. Like that doesn't help the students be more successful as they continue.
And it results in bad practice where you're housing a student, oh, we'll sit them in the library. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, no, we don't want you pushing each other around.
How do we help engage the kids so they like school enough to have less problems?
Yes. And then working with Christina and I, that how is the curriculum engaging the student where the student is feeling, I gotta be at school, I'm not gonna, that urgency to the academic piece, it fits in as well.
Great, thanks.
What you were just saying about Hispanic males in middle school, do we have data on that? Like we have data on so much other things, but I don't really see a gender.
That was not in here, that would be in a deeper dive on suspension, we can actually, or behavior, we can absolutely get that.
Okay, I'm just curious. I mean, I don't need to see it. I'm just want to check that we have that.
And again, and I don't want to overhit it. That's where we would, with an admin team, be looking at student-led data, where there is a single student who was suspended 8 times. What's going on there? Now that shows us 8 suspensions of a Hispanic student, as we should at the higher level. But deep down, this is one student who is acting out in a tier 3 level of service. So what's going on?
So there is probably a gender disparity within suspensions at middle school.
Absolutely, yes, males predominantly across all suspensions, all grade levels.
Do we have targeted interventions that are targeted towards gender? Like, do we have to do different things for boys and girls?
We do sometimes, that's an interesting question. Interventions behaviorally, no, we interventions work much more case managed, much more granular than that. Like we don't have where we have after-school programming, there's sports programming that's gender-based. But no, I think your question is, are there behavioral interventions that are more gender-based? And no, it's not something that we see as kind of applicable. But we do suspend males at a higher rate. Males also act out at a different rate in ways that aren't always containable. But that's definitely something we can look at.
Yeah, I mean, we look at all these other breakouts and I'm wondering if there is, I'm not an expert on this, but if there is something we can do to address this outstanding problem with this specific population.
Yeah, interesting to see what the addition of something like Valley Sports with physical activity and structured sports competition will do with after-school KLAS discipline. There's research that shows structured competition, especially amongst male students, can reduce aggressive behavior. And, like we know why, is they need to get out of the seat and run around and bump into each other for a while. And so we can see this year how that looks for KLAS.
Interesting, thank you. Just occurred to me. I do wanna piggyback on something Michelle was saying about the truancy letters, and I have been contacted by a few parents this year about who are just scared, whose kids have, for example, speech therapy or something that they know they're going to be pulling out of school, and they weren't aware that that was an excused absence, and they were like texting me, like, are you sure it's okay? And I'm wondering if there's like some language change that we can look at. I've heard anecdotally that different schools have different language in their letters, that some are a little bit friendlier, and I'm wondering if we can look at some best practices.
We can. Gabriela Sanchez is the student services technician. She and I attended a workshop on these actual letters because this isn't just an us problem. Some of the letter components are legally required, and we have not the minimum number of legally required components, but they're put in there correctly. The language is not the state language that's in most letters, so it is changeable. I would have to look into whether different sites have different pieces of the letter that they've changed. I don't see that that's the case, but it is the case that the letter is a legal document. It's part of the truancy ed code process. Some of it has to be in there, specifically the ed code around the consequences, the impacts of truancy, all of that is pretty boilerplate. And personally, I've received one as well, is off-putting. And seeing my wife open it and read it and her reaction to it, I was like, oh, this is what that's like. And we didn't put it on the fridge. It's not a good letter. It's upsetting. And I hate to say it, but it's intended to say, please do not continue doing this. Your child will have an academic impact, even if it's Disney World. It has an academic impact. But can they be nicer? I think they can and still get that effect.
So I wouldn't want it to be the minimum, I would want it to be a little bit more padded with a little bit like, how can we help you overcome this problem?
Yeah, by minimum, I meant the minimum number of like, you have to show them your tardies, there's minimum elements.
Right, I understand, so,
yeah. Got it, thank you.
Yeah, and then also to say to piggyback on what Nancy was saying, I would really appreciate seeing the data on kids that we've had their entire academic career. I'm not sure how we would get that or how we would break it out or what the circumstance would be, but I know that we sometimes have kids who don't stay with us the whole time, and having that and having the kids who we've had since TK and now they're in 8, having those numbers to look at would be good, would be helpful.
Okay, so I have just a couple things. First of all, again, like the math discussion, I really think we ought to have this meeting as a regular board meeting with translation services, that's more accessible, that's recorded, that's up on YouTube. Just for transparency, and because 40% of our families are Hispanic. Not that they all need translation services, but just to kind of be very welcoming and open. I know this is the first one we're doing, but I'm just saying, as we're going forward, even if it's even though we have business at the other board meetings, maybe this is, maybe it's an extra board meeting, or maybe it's it's its own standalone thing. Maybe we call it something else, I don't know. Whatever this is, I think it should have translation, whatever it is, even if we still govern.
We did ask the county and the money.
Yeah, but I mean, just.
We got it.
Okay, so then, second thought is that, it has to do with this idea of transparency and sharing that maybe as we're developing our website sections, that this information, sort of like our transportation plan or strategic plan, that this kind of has a home on our website so that people can see the updates pretty easily. If they want to watch the meeting, they can, just to have it available for more people. My second comment is, so my first comment is about transparency. The second comment is about the Hispanic student data, and what you just handed out on the table in the hard copy. My thought of I flagged it in the comments, you know, what I was asking for was, we're tracking that the Hispanic data is all red or orange, and like, there's no yellow, there's no green. And they're compared to all students, but in the board packet comments and in talking to Mike, the Hispanic students are in the all students. And so what I'm wondering is if we're really trying to understand the gap for the Hispanic students compared to other students, we should have a Hispanic and non-Hispanic number. That would be that would make it seem like more, like really where, like what are we really talking about for differences for achievement?
And I think we had that when we were doing strategic plan, that data was in those packets.
Well, we had like English only, right, which isn't quite the same thing, or we had like, we started talking about like.
But we can pull Hispanic and non-Hispanic.
Yeah, so just like going, I think just as a view.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then my third and final thing was about the idea about, I put up the question in the board packet comments about other districts that are doing kind of more radical structural moves to really meet the needs of their Hispanic population, so whether it's like phonics and having like the whole school move towards phonics in a way that is, it's just something a teacher could not do on its own, a grade level could not do on its own. So I think it was Campbell Union won a CSBA award, Golden Bell. Yeah, they're ringing that thing quite a bit, but I was like one of the validators and I got to see the program. And it was not like, it had to be a school-wide program and then they're going district-wide with it because they've had results. So it was not just phonics, but also kind of changing the way that they did all like the resource specialists, how they worked with the phonics teams and, you know, the reading intervention they did. Every single thing was all about just a different system. And I'm not saying go do that one. I know there's other groups like Mountain View's doing something else, or other districts have won other awards for other things. But I just think that like looking at all the red and just that that's our growing population, I feel like I appreciate all the work that's being done, like, you know, just with the curriculum and moving all those. Yeah, but I do feel like year after year after year, like we just need to do something that really focuses on this group. So that's my comments.
Yes, so I did have some comments. I like that we are doing this, that we are putting the day to study and compare how we're doing with the strategic plan, and it's the starting of this. I do have, of course, like everybody, some experiences with the letter. Yeah, one of the things is that we got it for the first time. Sarah Tells was here, and I got it, but the thing is that the kids weren't coming out of the car with time. They needed a little bit more time to get to the classroom, and they were getting like 5 minutes late. But they didn't lose any class. They were just a little bit late. And then I got the letter, and the letter says, quotes the law. And when you Google the law says that you need to have more than 1 hour missing the class or something like that. And I asked, like, when did they miss 1 hour? When did they miss more than 5 minutes?
Sure, so there's
And there
different,
wasn't.
tardiness is categorized in two different ways. There's a tardy, and then there's what's called a T30. Anytime a student is more than 30 minutes late to a class session, that is a full day unexcused absence. You can't have more than one in a day. So if you have 3 T30s, you don't automatically have 3 absences. However, it is a student that was just 5 minutes late one time, there does come a threshold, and we adjust this. If you're 5 minutes late to class 30 times, we can look at that and say that's an unexcused absence. And you would get a letter saying, hey, this is looking as truancy, we have to correct this. Could you go through truancy mediation because of 5 minute tardies? No, that would be very rare. But once you have a 30 minutes late to class, then the state says that's an unexcused absence from the day, not even from
6 times.
From the whole day?
T30s.
That's dumb.
No, it's not the math 5 times, no, it doesn't work that linearly, it's adjustable for us, we can kind of change that. But if you get a T30,
So if a kid comes to school 35 minutes late, they are marked absent,
They are
even
marked-
though they were there for
no, they're
every
marked
class.
as a T30, so they're
Okay.
present, but that amount of missing time is triggering what counts as one unexcused event for the school. So at 3 unexcused events, you get that first truancy letter. So if you're 30 minutes late 3 times, now 30 minutes late doesn't mean your parent walked you in, said, hey, we were at the dentist and signs you in. That means you're no reason, no rationale, walking into class 30 minutes late. More common in middle school,
Well, it's
but
not technically, it's not technically a reason, because they didn't like my reasons. My kid's like sick, no, was sick, and we let him sleep in.
yeah, that would be an unexcused absence.
Yeah, but I mean,
Though
that's
I-
the reason though, I'm saying,
It is a reason, yes.
Not an excusable reason.
yeah.
Correct. We have trust me, there's a limited number we can excuse and we negotiate this. It's like, not negotiate, but how do we, this is kind
There's
of.
not many things that are excusable.
This is correct.
And I don't lie, so my kids don't get a lot of grace.
Well, in that case, this, they'll say like, oh yeah, this is just an automatic letter, so it shouldn't have gotten to you. So few years later, it happened, and then like, well, one of my kids has ADHD, and one of the things like getting out of the car with shoes, with
Yes.
backpack, everything, walking, don't get distracted and get inside the classroom.
Right.
It didn't always happen, and 2 kids getting at the same time, one of them was 5 minutes late,
Yes.
the other one just got right into the classroom.
Yep.
And then we got it again, but then that principal say like, oh no, that's not, but it's not how it's described on the law, so I shouldn't have this letter because it's only 5 minutes. And he's never been later than that, and this is, it doesn't matter, you need to put, it's part of the IPE, why don't we do something about it? They're like, no, that's not my problem at all, like, that's your problem, and if you're having these problems, maybe you should go to your school instead of coming all the way to the other side of the town for the school, and get out of the program, because maybe you cannot get here, like, something like that. So it was, I felt like, well, it's pretty much of however you feel like in those cases, like one teacher felt, like one principal felt it was okay, don't worry, and the other one felt like you should go back to virus.
We should have principles, and I hope.
But that was also quite a while ago, so hopefully things are better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should have site attendance teams that are able to flex interventions to the needs of the family within the bounds of what state law says, which is repeated tardiness to class does predict absence and truant behavior. So we have to do both, but we should be able to do it flexibly, especially if the student has special needs.
Okay, and then, it worries me, see, of course, this is the first time where we're just adapting the new strategic plan, and I love that, we're gonna be more into the data, and we're gonna be more attentive to this. But as we're looking at the data, it still worries, very worrisome that everything is red everywhere. And we did approach it was before we got the strategic plan, but we have been changing a lot in our curriculums. That's why it's like we need to take very seriously when we change from one curriculum to another, because we hope that this is what's gonna move the needle. We changed 2 years ago the EL, the curriculum, because the teachers were complaining that we didn't have one established thing for everybody. We did change the math curriculum for elementary last year. We've been changing in science. We changed a few times for reading. Still the numbers are, you wanted to cry when you see the numbers that we have in EL, in Spanish, in Hispanics, in math. And that's another thing, like there are some schools when you get math that is just not challenging for the kids. One of the reasons why I ended up changing from Bartlett to, well, I also like the Explorer program, but because my kids was way ahead and I just go like, well, in comparison with the other kids, you shouldn't worry, like, yeah, I'm worried that he's not moving ahead. That's everybody should have the right to be challenged, and just putting an easier curriculum is not doing anyone a favor. It's just teaching them better so they can do better and they can be the smartest.
What is the easier curriculum you put in?
Like, I don't know, like just making it easier, approachable for everybody. It's making it approachable, but it shouldn't be easier. It should be
Yeah,
as
we're not-
challenging as possible.
No one's recommending
But
any.
it's,
Are you talking about just as anecdote, or are you talking about?
Yes,
the curriculum?
putting them
Okay.
together. And putting the two dots together, like about her anecdote, which I also did.
Yeah, the math homework with the.
Yeah.
Yes,
with the
we should
coloring.
challenge the kids as much as they can, and we should be aware that whatever we're doing is gonna change their life with the kids. And yes, just wanted to point out, like, I'm very happy that we're doing everything where we're constantly working with our data, we're constantly working with the curriculum, we're periodically looking everywhere as much as we can, and I'm very appreciative of that. And we're doing a strategic plan, and we're working with the strategic plan, doing the best that we can. But still, I just don't wanna, ignore the fact that we're still on the break. Very, very lucky. Yes?
So when we talk about cohorts, there is a specific cohort that we have that is unique, and that's Juntos. And now that it's all the way out, I would like to have that specifically designated as well, because this may or may not, well, certainly when you break out schools, that will be important, but I don't want to assume in the cohorts that percentage of, it appears that people who are in the Juntos program want to stay in that program and want to stay in our district longer, just to segregate that. And it doesn't have to be on a quarterly basis. That's more like a year-to-year kind of thing.
So so you're saying you're wanting the data of like Hispanic students in Juntos compared to Hispanic students the rest of the district? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
In cohort.
Yes.
And also, I think that in the packet review, when I asked the question about the Hispanic numbers, and they showed us the Hispanic numbers for middle school. I think it was like 6th page, math 1 through 8 NWEA, and it was grades 6, 7, and 8. And that's where I saw that there were 4 students in 6th grade who were Hispanic, who were proficient in our whole district, and in 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, there were 16 students who were proficient, and then in 8th grade, there were 23 students who were proficient, like in the last year. And so, like, that got to, I think I asked a question about what were we doing for like the academic recovery options for the summer, which is like our one chunk of time that's, the free, and it's free time for the kids. And I just hope that we can, like, maybe there's a way to track academic recovery we're doing, not just during the school day, but the extended day, and any extended time for breaks, if there's opportunities for, like, Albert Rios, or what's his name? No, Professor Rios. What's the UCSB guy?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm.
Yeah,
not
Professor
Albert.
Rigby.
Oh,
Victor.
Victor, yes.
Victor Reed.
Victor, yes.
Victor Reed.
Yeah. Oh, very good. But if there's like a Victor Rios like intervention camp or something like that would, you know, kind of not do it in a punitive way, but give the kids an opportunity to really just focus on some of those academic skills that they're just, you know, behind on, and it may cause behavior, like it's easier to act out in math class than to be behind in math class, right? So hence middle school mixing it up. So, cause that, I mean, it's just, we have to work in the lower grades, but we have to serve the kids we have, you know? Which I believe the classroom teachers are doing as best they can.
Okay, so any more comments or questions? Well, thank you very much
Oh,
for
oh,
your
wait.
work, huh?
Wait a minute,
Oh,
you had asked for
sorry.
some feedback, did we give you directions about format that we like?
Yeah,
or didn't like?
any samples or displays that you like or you're partial to?
Like, did you like this format, or are the choices kind of the two, or anything?
Like of those different ones, you're kind of saying which ones do we like?
Yeah, including the ones that we display.
Yeah, the ones that we display.
Maybe like
But
the mouth.
we can mix and
I
match
think the
too.
color one is an easier thing to see than like this.
Yeah.
That's like, between those two, I like,
The conditional format.
yeah, like that color one more than just the percentages and the arrows. I mean, I don't really care because someone else might like something else.
Wrong preference, but I do like that that these do have those like arrows there.
Arrows,
To account for the percent change.
I mean, I almost, oh, sorry, what you say something?
No.
I was saying, I almost think like if we are gonna have a website, like, if we can just put both of them on there, right? Because like,
Yeah.
one person's gonna like one and one person's gonna like, we don't want like 20 different graphs of the
Right.
same thing, but if there's two different ones for different learning styles, right?
We're very partial to 2 sheets of paper.
I have a question about this. Is this one of those assessments where 50% is the average and that's where we expect people to be? Or is this saying that kids have like a 50-50 chance of being able to read at grade level standard, like the one clip?
And it's showing the proportion that have met standards.
I mean, as far
I don't know
as
if I
this,
understand what you're asking.
so if I as a parent send my kid here, I feel like I have an expectation that the child should have better than a 20% of a chance on whether they are going to learn to read proficiently. Is this test measuring, is it a test where where you're intended to be kind of in the middle? Is it like,
I don't think this is really a test, this is just,
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is just saying like,
measurement,
of
like,
20
when we
kids
look
in
at
our
this.
district,
yeah,
How many have met standards?
how many have met the standard?
yeah, so is the
It's the same thing
standard,
as like our graphs that were shown earlier.
so is
Standard
it
is
like,
60%.
okay, so is it like one of those tests where you kind of, where
How's it
50 is
now?
the
How's it
medium,
now?
or 50 is where 50 is the median, or 50 is the minimum? Like,
Proficient.
right, I mean,
It's not even that, it's having a 4.
yeah.
So I guess is your question more what
Is
is
your question
proficient
is,
mean?
Yeah,
yes.
what is
What does passing mean?
What is the standard?
Yeah.
Is the standard like,
That varies, that's set by the state.
It
Yeah.
meets the grade, it meets the grade levels, it meets the standards for the test that the students are doing, like.
They have a criteria that equals to proficiency levels. And so this is saying which percentage of your students are meeting proficiency levels according to the standards that the state
So
is
like
setting.
when across a whole
When you as a
spectrum.
parent get the CAS, like I get the CAS
Yeah.
for my kids, right? And it says
Right.
whatever percentile they're in, and whether that's proficient or meeting, or like almost, I can't remember the terminology, but there's like the proficient, almost proficient, I don't know, approaching, there's like the.
but like,
So like for third grade, it would be like all, imagine all the standards for third grade English, right? Which would be like main ID, identifies main idea and details and all these other things. And so like basically the test is assessing whether the kid understands.
right,
All
so
of those things.
Let her ask the question.
So when I take my baby to the doctor and it says he's in the 50th percentile, and that means that's
That's
fine,
good.
that's not a problem. And I don't need to try to push him into the 99th percentile by feeding him I don't know, something.
More food,
More
yeah.
food, right. So
This is not
No,
percentile,
it's not.
we're looking at this
No.
differently, this is not percentile.
This is not normed. The 50% example is, bell curve.
Yeah.
This one, these are the, you have to have a certain scale score to be considered proficient. And anyone that meets or exceeds that scale score is proficient.
And I really like the question because something that I think the same thing has always frustrated me. I'd be presented with data and it would be, say, 55% of the students are proficient, right? We would get that. And people would conflate that with 55th percentile,
Yeah.
right? And like, no, that's not good. 45% of the kids aren't proficient in my scenario. So like, yeah, we have to be like really clear about what's good enough. I think part of the problem is as we're growing, sometimes like getting to half the kids being proficient is success because we were something less than that before, but we can't be satisfied.
Yeah, but like, yeah, like when once we get our Hispanic kids to 50% proficient, that is a huge accomplishment, but we keep going.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're 96 below, they're only 4% proficient in
Yeah.
6th grade. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not good.
So for me, like for the format, I was thinking when I was reading through the slides that maybe like a report would be better with slides being like just the learnings, but like having gone through the process, I really think that it was great hearing you talk through, especially if it's something that's recorded that other people could listen to and get feedback from. I think having somebody kind of go through the numbers and go through the presentation would be really helpful, because I definitely like trying to pre-read and prepare for the meeting. It's really difficult when you don't have the context, but to have the context, you need the presentation, right? So like that's another reason why.
Well, thank you for all the work. It is 9:16 right now, and we move to our last item, which is teacher meetings and adjournment. The next meeting will be October 24. Oh, that's my anniversary. At 6 p.m. and it will be a regular board meeting. And with that, we close the meeting.
Right.